Let's bring in Democratic Senator Mark Warner of Virginia. He's the chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee. So we now can talk about exactly what's in the bill. It appears there's something for everyone in it, truly bipartisan in nature. It's taken a lot of work. It had folks like Chuck Schumer, who was on our show a little bit earlier, working directly with Mitch McConnell and figuring it out. And yet House Republicans and the Speaker himself saying it's pretty much dead on arrival. What do you say to Mike Johnson, beyond the fact that he denies that he's bending to Trump's wishes, which makes me wonder who else is influencing this decision? Vladimir Putin, because everything that he does seems to play into the Russian leader's hands. So is it Trump? Is it Putin? Or what do you have to say to the Republican Speaker of the House?
Well, Mika, first of all, let's acknowledge this took a long time, but this will be the most transformative change in border policy in decades. Matter of fact, if you go down and look at the Republican wish list of what they want to change on the border, asylum, parole, more officers, making sure that we do a better job of screening for fentanyl, frankly, and there were bipartisan support of all of those. The border's been a mess. Every one of that hit list is addressed in this piece of legislation. And on top of that, I'm glad you also brought up the question about Ukraine. That, in my mind, I've been in the Senate 14 years. I can't think of a more important decision than whether we will stand with our Ukrainian allies, particularly after Europe ponied up 50 billion euro in the last week or so, or whether we will walk away and have America's word never trusted again. So this does touch all of the hot issues, the money for Israel, Gaza, there's a component part for Indo-Pacific and helping Taiwan. This is the most comprehensive, both security and border peace. And I hope they will just take yes. I do think as people get a chance to digest this, my hope is that the Senate will move aggressively, will get 70, 75 votes. And then if the Speaker wants to, you pose the question the right way. Who is he kowtowing to? Was it domestic or foreign? But I hope the more time people take to look at this, the better I think it'll be.
Welcome to a Monday edition of the Nick and CJ Show. I'm one of your hosts. I'm CJ. What's up, Nick?
What's poppin', my friends, my family? Welcome back. Welcome back to another edition of Nick and CJ Show. Do you guys know that Congress only has around a 17% approval rating? 17%.
I wonder why.
As they act smug, as they continue to act like they're better than American people, as these people like spread Trump derangement syndrome, pretend they working for people, they have a 17% approval rating. Now I want to pull this back up. Can you go back like a few seconds? You know where they had that graph?
Yes,
up?
Absolutely.
That was astounding to see this. And
I wanted to pull this same. Look at this right here. Okay, here we go.
Find that pause screen. There we are. Now idle the screen. So let's see. Over 90 billion in foreign aid, 62 billion in military support for Ukraine. They don't even have a win condition, ladies and gentlemen. They have like senior citizens on the front line right now. You guys know that? Their military in shambles. Zelensky and their generals feuding right now. Now it's like there's like a fucking damn near mutiny against Zelensky. Now Zelensky trying to block elections because he's massively unpopular. But we still gonna send him $62 billion. Do you guys know it would only take around $25 billion to end homelessness in this country? You know, the problem that liberals like Cenk Uygur and TYT, their solution to the problem is to increase the police state, to give landlords more rights. That's the solution of the Democratic Party and, of course, the Republican Party as well. Meanwhile, we can have homelessness ended just with around the money that we send to Israel. The $14 billion, that's like, how many cities is that? Once again, it's like $20 billion for everybody. But 14, take the money we send to Israel alone. How many people we are housing with that amount of money? Fucking insane. Go ahead, CJ.
Yeah, I mean, we are right around the same lines, and the reason I picked this one instead of the Chuck Schumer video, because I was trying to find a video you haven't seen. I know you saw the Chuck Schumer video, where they essentially are saying the same thing, and this is what, and and it goes to the topic. So all of this wraps in together. And
Look,
the topic is
one more thing before we take this screen away. Sorry, CJ, but
yeah,
one more thing.
I'm gonna keep it up.
Look at the absurdity of it. I was just not thinking about this. Look at the second and third line there. I'm gonna read the third one first. 10 billion in humanitarian aid for Gaza and Ukraine, so they splitting it. And then 14 billion in military support for Israel. What are we doing? We're providing $14 billion to a genocidal apartheid state so they can commit a genocide. And then we say, oh, we're providing $5 billion to Gaza to provide sandwiches for the people still alive. Here, pat yourself up as we give bombs to the country. That's crazy. You guys see how the second and third line directly contradict? Anyway, let's continue.
Yeah, no, and to your same point, I wanted to bring this up here because into the broader topic of because this what we're seeing here to tie it to the topic is when a war economy no longer improves your poll numbers. Now, in American politics, it's a thing that, oh, when my poll numbers are this, when this is happening, go to war, start a conflict. And the idea behind it is that when you're fighting, like, for example, if one of us started to fight somebody, we're out somewhere and one of us started to fight, we're all going to come together and say, hey, what's going on with one of our members? You see how everybody sort of comes together. But the larger point I wanted to make here is that the Democratic Party, do we understand what we're seeing on the screen? These are Democrats, Nick, that are pushing draconian border policy and saying, Republicans, we're giving you literally everything you want, not in exchange for anything we're getting. They keep saying this is bipartisan. List the things that the Democrats are getting.
And think about why they made a deal, CJ.
Yeah, go ahead.
And right back to you, but think about why they made that deal in the first place. Or did they make the devil's bargain with Republicans who they called Republicans racist and fascist for the border policies under Trump, and now they are 100% for those same policies? Why? Did they sacrifice their previous beliefs to give us health care for a deal to get minimum wage increase? No, they did that so they can get a deal so we can send more money to Nazis in Ukraine and to promote more war and to fund the genocide in Gaza. So they said these issues are so important, we're willing to cave on the right on immigration, but nothing for the working class. Do people have any idea how crazy this is? But go ahead, CJ. I just want to add that.
Yeah, but the thing is, Nick, who negotiates this way, Nick? I'm going to negotiate for something I want in exchange for something that all of us want. How does that make sense? Like getting war funding is what Republicans and Democrats want. So giving them, you getting that in exchange for that's not an exchange. You're giving them just solely something they want. Yeah, go ahead.
Now that's a good point, CJ. Now I'm gonna give you guys my theory of why they do this, because you know how Republicans have to pretend they're against Ukraine support. The establishment want giant ICE DHS budgets. They want war. So the best thing you can do is, while you have one side of the establishment pretend they're against the war, they do this dance for like, oh man, I would hate to fund this war more, but I would if we get border funding. Wink, wink. You notice how none of these deals go against the overall will of the elites and the working class, and never the bargain about anything that give working class people money, health care. For example, they said one of the list of demands on the screen was like $5 billion to our in aid to our allies in the Indo-Pacific. Essentially, you don't have to go back, but essentially Taiwan and the people who are anti-China. So they get $5 billion in aid, but the hood can't get that? Like, why is that question never asked among the American people? And that's why I don't understand the people who, and I did a segment breaking down what a lot of Black people in Chicago were saying, because I hold my community accountable as well. People just, CJ, they just take what these people say and they're like, oh, you see what these Black people in Chicago say about migrants? Nigga, that doesn't mean they're right. Nigga, you guys realize they was complaining about a $9 million deal that supposed to help migrants as we send in billions of dollars to Nazis in Ukraine. So you guys know what upset me? If nothing is more pathetic when I see black people and brown people like Master can have some crumbs, Master can have some crumbs, and they start fighting each other over crumbs.
It's
as
crabs
white
in a
people in
bucket.
the empire is bawling.
Yeah.
That shit is fucking absurd to me. You guys, it sounds pathetic. And then what they were saying as well, they was like, oh man, why the migrants getting all these money, but we not getting no money? So I have a solution. Let's send billions of dollars to the border. How's that giving money to our community, CJ? That's literally what that dumb woman said, and people treating her seriously. I have criticism of Democrats because they're spending money on the migrants and not us. So I have a solution. Let's send that money to the border instead. How does that make sense? You guys see how they say stuff that makes no goddamn sense? We don't go for that. Anyway, let's continue, CJ. I don't want to.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So let's, and just another section in the same video, and we're both speaking to the point of this war economy. It's not producing the same dividends. The people are not falling in line the same way as it used to be. We're not doing it. You can't be sending, to your point about some black, you can't be sending, billions over here and not doing anything here. But listen to this next part here that he talks to, I don't even need to preface it. Let's listen to this next part.
Right, and I think one of the things, Senator, that we had Chuck Schumer on earlier this morning. He was talking about how the history here is interesting, right? Because we started out here really. This was all about America's role in the world. This was not this is a border bill only because of the politics of it, because Republicans got to force the border bill in. Is it the case that on these broader questions,
Nick, did you hear what he just said? This is a war funding bill that we're calling a border bill. You see how we just got fooled? This is a war funding bill that we're calling a border bill, Nick. That's what this is. This is the only way. This is what. But let me make this. But this is how we know that the empire's failing, Nick. When your military arm can't win the war. When your military arm is having fights over funding for war. This is a war bill that we're calling a border bill. That's what this is. And Democrats are the ones who are unapologetically and vigorously pushing this bill, Nick. And a bill that goes against everything their constituency wants. So why is it that war economy does not produce the same dividends? Because the war economy is now taken out of the pockets of everyday Americans, and we can see it. Whereas before, they can have smoke and mirrors. You get what I'm saying? Now, 20 years ago, oh, you're cutting here and you're sending billions at the same time? Like now it's becoming to where people are not falling in line, and that's the sign of a failing empire. But let's let them finish out this point before I move to the next part here.
The questions of the broader international questions, the questions of Ukraine, the questions of American aid in Israel and trying to manage that situation. Is that a place where there is no longer the kind of bipartisan consensus and support that there was? I mean, the Israel question is in a sense after 10/7 is new in front of us. But this Ukraine question has been going on for some years. We've seen some ebbing of support for the bipartisanship that we saw on that. Mm-hmm. Where do we stand on those questions? If you took the border bill out of this, where would we be in terms of trying to get the House and the Senate to be able to back Joe Biden in terms of what he needs to do on the world stage?
Well, first of all, remember, the border got put in because our Republican friends said,
okay, there he goes.
Listen to his objection, fam. Listen to what he views as the worst possible thing that can happen to a country when there's not complete unanimous decision on war making. He's upset because there's debate on whether we should support a war or not. He said, he's like, remember how we used to have these overwhelming bipartisan consensus over all our wars? You know how there was no debate over the wars we started? We missed the good old days of that. And what he's saying is not even true, CJ. There is bipartisan support for all these wars. The difference is there's like 30 Republicans against Ukraine war. So out of hundreds of people in Congress, 30 Republicans are against it. And that lack of like unanimous consent for the war, even just 30 Congress people being against it, is appalling to them. What happened to the days when we didn't debate war? That's insane, and that's an extremely anti-democratic position. But I'll let it continue.
Absolutely. So to finish out here, action is a little slow here. There we go.
And said, we got a crisis on the border. Our hair's on fire. If we don't do something now, we're not going to give you aid for Ukraine.
Right.
Well, we've given everything they wanted. And frankly, it took the Democrats a while to move this far, but we have moved. And on the issue of Ukraine, actually, there have been some loud voices against aid to Ukraine out of the Republican conference. But there was a lunch recently where the Republicans went around the room, and my friends reported to me the overwhelming majority of the Republican senators knew that if you walk away from Ukraine now, America's word will never be taken again. So I actually think there may be more support for Ukraine than even some of the Republican leadership thought. But all that will be tested this week. That we're going to have a vote as early as Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
So, Senator, on that, we know that many Republicans changed their stance on the border piece of this because Donald Trump came out against it, saying, I want to preserve this as an election year issue. He's also been very reluctant to back Ukraine.
Yeah.
And so,
super quick. Notice how he said, if we don't provide unlimited fund to Ukraine like we promised, we will never be able to come back and they will never trust our word again. Why doesn't that logic apply to politicians who promise stuff to the working class? So Joe Biden,
that is
like for example, promised a public option. And policy asked that to my right, for example. But since Joe Biden didn't follow through on the public option, shouldn't that be a crisis? Because he didn't follow through on that, because we should never take him seriously again. You guys see how that logic from the ruling class only applied to war? I'll let it continue.
That is a great point. Because what they do the opposite, Nick, when they're doing it right now, when they don't fulfill the promises, they try to tell you, well, this was just as good. This other thing that you didn't ask for is just as good. The NLRB is just as good. They do the exact opposite to that point. Can
you guys start breaking promises about war from now on? Like, keep your promises with us. Break your promises with Ukraine and the UK and Israel. And everyone will be okay with that. You guys' approval rating will be 17%. But go ahead, CJ.
Yeah. Could you imagine, like, Zelensky and Benjamin Netanyahu going, hey, man, you guys aren't keeping your promise, man. And we're the ones like dancing and
they will have an 83% approval rating instead of a 17% disapproval approval rating if it was that was the case. But let's continue.
And certainly many Democrats have said, well, that's because of his close ties to Vladimir Putin. So if this does become a separate, what happens if Trump comes down against that as well, saying, no, don't go for Ukraine? What recourse do you have?
Well, first of all, I hope the American people will then say, hold up, this guy says he wants border controls. He turns it down for a political issue. I've been in this job 14 years. I can't think of a more important vote, a more historic vote of whether we will stand by Ukraine, which has taken out 80% of the Russian ground forces pre-war, where the Europeans have put up $50 billion, where nations
it's now 80%, Nick? I thought it was 50%, the last propaganda story they had. They've taken out 80% of Russia's. That's just silly. That is just silly. That is just silly. Who believes this? Who believes this nonsense? I'm gonna bring up the next.
They took out 80%. They take out 80% of Russian strength, but at the same time, if we don't stop them in Ukraine, they're gonna take over Europe. Can anyone explain how these two narratives make sense together? You guys see, they tell you stuff that make no sense. People don't even think about it. And in one hand, Russia is weak. They're losing to Ukraine. They have been embarrassed. The military commanders have been exposed as completely incompetent. On the other hand, if we don't provide Ukraine aid immediately, Russia is going to take over Europe. Tell me, guys, how the two thoughts make sense together. They confuse Americans to the point where they don't even understand how they've been told stuff that doesn't make sense. But let's continue.
It's like he's like half and half. He's like one half is muscles and the other half is like any person, I guess. But to kind of add a little more to this discussion, because I do want to tie some more to this and show
Yeah.
a couple of spots in the media. Now, typically, when we see the stock market, Nick, when we see jobs, because we just saw a jobs report of like 300,000 or something like that, 300,000 plus unemployment numbers like we see today, it translates into good polling numbers for said president or for whoever the sitting president. But what we're experiencing, Nick, and this is why I think it speaks to the falling of an empire, we're experiencing that doesn't happen anymore. Remember 9/11? You know how when we see when they always showing these historical presidents, how past presidents match up in polling, we always see that outlier George Bush.
Yeah.
Because his polling skyrocketed because of the war. And same with different presidents. It was bumps here and there, but with him, it was a large increase because typically when you go to war, a president is seen as a unifier. It's like, okay, we all have our, issues at home, but now it's time to fight the big bad person on the outside. So we need to come together, and that is typically the logic. But that we're not seeing that with Joe Biden. So what I want to show you is how this war economy, he's upside down for every war. For the Middle East, in Poland, he's upside down. Israel, Ukraine, Syria, every single war, he's upside down. So the war economy is not paying dues to the sitting president. Now let's look at his polling right here. This is Meet the Press. We're just gonna watch maybe 3 or 4 minutes of this. It's all polling. It's nothing else but polling, just numbers. Let's watch.
Carol. With the general election just 9 months away, President Biden has declined on every measure since 2020, is struggling with key elements of his base, and now trails former President Donald Trump by wide margins on the issues voters say are most important to them. Joining me now to take us through the numbers is national political correspondent Steve Kornacki. Steve, these are some truly stunning numbers.
They really are, Kristen. And let's just start with the bottom line. When you ask folks, hey, if it's the general election and it's Trump versus Biden, in our poll, Donald Trump now leads Joe Biden by 5 points. Compare that to the last time we polled back in November. Trump was ahead then, but it was only by 2 points. It's even more significant when you look at it this way. Over time, we have been testing for 5 years now, going back to 2019, a Biden-Trump matchup. Remember, 2019, 2020, Joe Biden led. He led big in every single one of our polls. For the first time in November, Donald Trump polled ahead in our poll, and now at 5 points, this is the biggest lead NBC has ever had in 16 polls for Donald Trump over Joe Biden. And of course, undergirding all of this is this question of he is the incumbent, Joe Biden. We ask voters, what do you think of the job he's doing? And look at that, Kristen, 37% approve and now 60% disapprove.
And we should say that is the lowest approval rating since former President George W. Bush's second term.
Yeah, and it's put that in further context, too. Bush in his second term wasn't running for re-election. Here's the presidents who were running for re-election in our poll starting their re-election year. What was their approval rating? Bush was over 50. He won. Obama was almost at 50. He won. Trump 4 years ago was 46. He lost. Look how low Biden's.
Good Lord. Good Lord. Now, when we're comparing these presidents, let's talk about their war history, Nick, and their corresponding numbers you see on the board. Now, when you're talking about of the 4 presidents you see on the list, who has taken us to the most, who has had the most conflicts either during there or has added additional? Of course, Obama, of course, George Bush, and look at their numbers going high. War economy paying off for a sitting president. Look where it changes here. Joe Biden is in the same war economy. Joe Biden's doing the same amount of warmongering. Joe Biden's even increasing warmongering, which is typically a thing that is positive for a president. But look, it's 37%. For him, we are seeing a change because people are no longer in the independent media. I gotta say, I'm patting myself on the back. When I was watching these numbers, I was patting RBN on the back. Like, yep. I can't help but hope. Now I'm wish casting. I can't help but hope that we have a little bit to do with people waking up to this war economy. And just because we're at war, we need to analyze this, you know, this anti-intellectualism needs to go out the window. I'm hoping now I might be putting more onto it, Nick, than what's happening. It could be truly just people just looking at it from raw, like a living standard. Like, look, my living standard is fucked. And look, you guys are sending billions over there. And people could be just looking at it just like that. But the war economy, Nick, is no longer paying off. There's a couple of more numbers.
Yeah, it's almost like it's almost like supporting the genocide makes you extremely unpopular, right? Like looking at George W. Bush in hindsight is crazy though, right? 54%.
Yeah.
You guys feel like he was like the devil growing up, man. He still is. Like that 54% is crazy. But I think people don't realize, and I know a lot of people like use like they may over exaggerate, but I promise to God I'm not here. I am not over exaggerating. I see some shit, I study history. I truly believe that the Biden administration is one of the most depraved administrations that we have ever seen. One of the most morally reprehensible administrations. I'm talking about any country. Like, you guys realize that Biden lied about the 40 beheaded baby. He said he saw it. Even the Israel and IDF wasn't saying that. They lied. You had the Washington Post and New York Times that had investigative reports, and that doesn't even cover the grades on the other, like, quote unquote deplorable media, right? Even the New York Times and Washington Post said Al-Shifa Hospital wasn't Hamas headquarters. You want to know who came out and said they have a secret report exposing Hamas as Al-Shifa Hospital and they never gave evidence for? It was the Biden administration. You had Joe Biden that said he saw evidence that Al-Shifa Hospital is Hamas headquarters. Everybody, including the BBC, everybody said it. They did not. You had Joe Biden that sent 1,000-pound bunker buster bombs to Gaza, knowing that they about to use that against refugee camps. And then they lie about the fact that they killed journalists like Shireen Abdul-Akleh. Like, when you look at everything that Biden has done, arming Nazis in Ukraine, escalating war with China, bombing Ansar Allah in Yemen because they're standing up against genocide. Despite South Africa's ironclad argument regarding genocide at ICJ, the Biden administration said, "Oh, nothing there, nothing there." When you look at the level of gaslighting, lying, remember when there was the video of the school being bombed, and then Jake Sullivan like, "Nope, no evidence that they meant to do that." Like, the level of gaslighting and pure evil of the Biden administration is historical, right? And I'm talking about, like, I would say maybe the last 40 years, keep it simple. We never seen this pure amount of evil and disdain. There are people in the Biden, and I'll pass it right to you, TJ, but there are people in Biden's White House,
keep going.
people that work for Biden that are walking out. They are threatening to resign. I did hotspot stories on these. Like, there's so much discontent, and Biden don't give a fuck. Biden don't give a fuck that Democrats are upset. He don't give a fuck that the ICJ ruled that Israel complicit with genocide. You guys, I've never seen anything like this. Like, we've seen some horrible stuff. They just don't care about anything. Meanwhile, I continue. I think you guys get it. But I think Biden deserves that 37%. And I do not say this lightly at all. As someone who despises George Bush, I despise Obama. I do not say this lightly. Joe Biden is the greatest of all evils that we've seen in my lifetime. I am 100% willing to say that. When you look at the evidence, he expanded the Cuban embargo. I don't have enough time. Every category, he's been horrible. You had a Cuban government that said that he applied a Cuban embargo worse than Trump. You had not Saudi Arabia, but Iran that said he as anti-Iran as Donald Trump was. AMLO came out like, bro, Biden is a fucking lunatic. Have you guys seen what AMLO said about him? But I'll wrap up because I didn't mean to go on this long rant. I apologize. But
No, that's perfect.
Biden deserves that number more than anybody. I don't have the time to ramble all the shit he has done. It's been crazy how evil the Biden administration has become, and that's why it's insane that you see people saying to vote for him. But anyway, so I'll pass you, I'm done. Go ahead.
Yeah, let's just look at a couple of more numbers, and then I got to go to the next receipt here.
Biden's number is compared to those predecessors at this point.
Their number's all much bigger than President Biden.
It shows you the improvement Biden has to make here in the coming months. The issues that are driving this too, the economy, no surprise.
This is where it hurts.
Look at that advantage for Trump, 22 points, and securing the border here, folks. A very important Trump.
Let's pause here on these numbers. I don't know what's happening with my screen. Okay, now all those words.
Sometimes
went
it
off.
lags like that.
Look
sometimes
at that. Yes. Okay. So you know what you know what you feel my pain here. So dealing with the economy on the left, securing the border. So this graphic answers or addresses two things. On the right, securing the border, you're asking yourself, why is the Democrats selling out the freaking our brown and our undocumented part of our coalition? There you go. Anytime white people are in fear, and that's all this number is showing. When white people are in fear, they're going with the Southern strategy. They're going with those people that this fear is falling, that they're falling for. And so he's upside down on that number. Go ahead.
And no one care about addressing the root problem. No one gives a fuck
at all.
Sanctions. So you guys had decades of a sanctions regime, decades of policy of destabilizing countries in the global South. Like, do you guys realize when people seek asylum, that's legal? Right. No one's talking about this. The reason why we have a massive border crisis is because we completely destabilize countries like Venezuela and the global South with sanctions. So in our policy, if we have sanctions and we are promoting economic war on a country, they have the right to seek asylum because we are promoting war on them. This is an idea that has been accepted as international law for decades, and people are willing to sacrifice that for what? We gonna get more money to the border, and then you get reparations. Is that what you think gonna happen? Oh man, we fixed the border crisis. We fixed the immigration crisis. Let's increase the minimum wage right now. You guys think that was gonna happen? I am not taking anyone serious about this issue unless you're talking about ending sanctions and U.S. imperialism, which is the root cause of this problem. I am not going to support a government that bomb and sanctions other countries and then I deny people their right for asylum after what they did to their country. Like, people need to get fucking real, man. And they fall for the ruling class strategy when they start like, oh my God, look at all the resources the migrants are taking. Look at the resources used on war. Look at the resources being used on the police state. Look at the resources that are being used and sent to the border that is not solving the problem. But people say there's an open border. Biden is spending $6 billion more than Donald Trump. No one is acknowledging that. So what is your solution to the problem? More money? Remain in Mexico? These are not solving the root problems. Girls, I laugh at the idea that you're gonna, if Chinese migrants want to go USA, you're gonna stop them at the fucking border. That's what they said on Fox News. They're like, we need a border deal because Chinese migrants are coming across the border. Do you guys believe this stupid shit? But let's continue.
And then on the left, it addresses the economy. This is, Nick, to me, when pundits are talking about Joe Biden's number, this is the one where you see they are really deflated on. Is the number about the economy. It's like, how is this possible? It's like, how is it possible that the masses aren't falling for our propaganda anymore? How is this possible? Because they're saying, but you know what I love about what's happening right now? They're calling it a disconnect, is that it is a glaring flashlight, a glaring spotlight, I should say, being flashed on their markers to determine a good economy. Is putting a flashlight on them. This doesn't tell us that this is a good economy. That's what this is doing. But instead, what they're saying in media is that, where's the disconnect? Now, they're not saying the disconnect is this way to them, meaning they aren't understanding us. They're saying the disconnect is what they're describing as this is a great economy is the reality, and you are disconnected. That's what they're saying. Now, look at this number, 55% to 33%, Nick. That's 22%, they say. And with him adding over 300,000 jobs, with the unemployment rate being so low, with the stock market being where it's at, and they keep saying this inflation going down. I don't see it, but they keep saying inflation going down and gas prices. With all these markers that historically have said that they have been able to confuse people to say these are the things. This is a good economy. You have a job. Oh, it doesn't matter if you can't pay your bills with your job. You having a job means a good economy. And you know, and if you're not doing well, that's just on you. people aren't falling for that shit anymore, and it's reflective in the numbers. Nick, there's no president that can win with numbers on the economy like that. It's never been seen. It's never been seen, and I don't think he's going to be the first one to do it. And this is the reason why they're panicking. But let's continue. Let's move along a little quicker here.
With a 35-point advantage.
The economy is so striking, Steve, because jobs are up, inflation is down. Voters aren't giving him credit for that, clearly.
Yeah, there are a couple areas in here, I think, where Democrats see potential opportunities to grow Biden's support. Certainly, they are hoping the economy, folks change their perceptions of it and start rewarding Biden for it. That's what they're hoping, certainly. How about this, though? Also cautionary for the White House. Go back 4 years ago. There was two folks in their 70s running.
Lord,
Biden
look
versus
at this
Trump.
number.
We asked then, do the candidates have the necessary physical...
Okay, you stop looking at the same thing. Go ahead.
You seen the insanity? They
Jesus.
They say people's perception of the economy. Why are
Right.
people not giving Biden credit because of their perception? You mean our lived experiences? You mean the experience? I don't have health care. My mom had medical debt. She's been struggling financially. I have multiple people who would have been homeless. They didn't fucking live with me. I would love to be a single bachelor on his own. I can't do it because I can't let my people go homeless. That's the reality. That's the perception of my life, CJ. Meanwhile, they wondering why I'm not sitting back like, oh man, I need to get Jim Crow Joe credit for this amazing economy as my mom going through medical debt. The only GDP that matters, the GDP of your household, ladies and gentlemen. Don't allow the establishment, college, PMC motherfuckers to pull out these statistics to trick you. Yeah, nigga, I'm only eating 1 meal a day because I'm struggling. But hey, I see a Steve Kornacki report. He talking about the GDP. What the fuck are y'all talking about?
But that is essentially what they want you to do is buy into. Now, just think about this. How the hell? Let me say it this way: is a government serious about determining how good an economy is when they don't have markers that determine whether or not people are making enough money to buy things, people that are making enough money to pay all of their bills? How is that not a marker? Shouldn't a marker be, 80% of people are able to pay all of their bills and save $500 every? Why isn't that the marker? That seems to be the marker. Instead, the markers are to tell you how owners are extracting from the economy, how well they're doing. Go ahead, Nick.
Yeah, CJ, that's the amazing point that my friend Carl Zah made on our show that we did last week at Nick and Night, where the main marker that they use in China that they use is like the optimism. Like when you ask people in China how optimistic they are, people in China are ecstatic, bro, according to the polls, because they see all this new technology that's available to everybody. They're not homeless, they're not starving, they got health care. They see the society that went from extreme poverty to being a leader of the world. Like they are extremely enthusiastic. Meanwhile, ask Americans about their how enthusiastic they are about the future. Why do you guys think there's so many doomsday preppers in America? Why do you guys think there've been so many conspiracy theories about the end times? Like people in America is deeply pessimistic about the future. That's probably the most important marker, right? Regarding how well people are doing, how optimistic you are about the future. People in China doing so well, nigga, they looking years ahead. They see the programs being made from senior citizens, like the senior citizen college campuses they working on, the forever learning. That's like I forgot the exact term they use, but they have like this forever learning program initiative they started where like who seniors who don't work, they can do all these, like they can learn like the piano, the violin. It's kind of like a campus. It's a super cool program. I'm like, what, dude? That's crazy. And now people near retirement, they excited about that. Meanwhile, people in America, they get in their 50s, they get in their retirement, they're like, fuck, I didn't save enough. You guys see the difference? In China, seniors are learning, they are living, they are thriving. In America, they work at Walmart and they say, hey, welcome to Walmart. The difference is astounding, but they never talk about that. But let's continue, CJ.
Yeah, just a couple of more slides here, and then I have a couple more receipts.
Mental capacity. It was about even 41-38. Now you ask it,
Oh, just a quick point
46% say
here.
that Donald
Just a quick point here. If you look, let me slide it back so you can see it. Look at this number in September. Look how that same question, it was only a 3% difference in the margin of error. That's essentially the same number. September of 20. So that's 2020. So through the presidency, because to me, this is what that means. Because if you're saying when at the beginning of his presidency, September 2020, fairly at the beginning, and now several years have passed by. So this means this number reflects what people have seen to me. Because how the hell is it going to make this big of a jump? Because Donald Trump goes up and Joe Biden goes down. He goes from 38 to 23 with necessary mental, physical health. And Donald Trump goes up 5 points. To me, that's an illustration of people seeing with their eyes, and they're trying to pretend like it's just the number.
That's what they're hoping, certainly. How about this, though? Also cautionary for the White House. Go back 4 years ago. There was two folks in their 70s running, Biden versus Trump. And we asked then, do the candidates have the necessary physical, mental capacity? It was about even, 41-38. Now, you ask it, 46% say that Donald Trump does, just 23% when it comes to Joe Biden. And think of one of the central themes of Biden's campaign in 2020. He said he'd be competent. He said he'd be effective. Folks said they believed that in our poll in 2020. One of the big reasons Trump lost, but now complete, total reversal. 48% say Trump competent and effective. Barely a third.
That's so embarrassing.
That's right. He said he
Trump.
As
was
someone,
going to bring
as someone
stability
who still
back to the White
thinks
House.
very little of Trump. I'm sorry, I'll be quick. As someone who still thinks very little of Trump, I'm the kind of person who like hear Donald Trump speak, and it's like incredible that people take him seriously. Like that's like how low I think of him as a person. So that is incredible. That what I view that Trump's biggest weakness, the fact that people consider him an incompetent joke, is now the position that Biden is in, and people view Trump as the competent one. Bro, that's a crazy accomplishment that Democrats allowed it to happen, that they are now viewed as more incompetent than Donald Trump. Incredible. Let's continue.
That has to be a huge blow just ego, but a couple of more slides. I think we're going to end on the foreign policy one when we get back right to the presentation.
Sure, I'm chilling.
And now he's the incumbent, and folks are maybe looking at him and maybe looking at Trump as not the incumbent in a different light here. Just a couple other things to get through.
Right
on
here.
The foreign policy, again, Israel, Hamas, center stage in the in the world picture right now. Overall, big disapproval for Biden on foreign policy, particularly on Israel, Hamas. That's particularly acute among the youngest.
Oops, I meant to stop it before he moved. Sorry, everybody. So let me let it go forward.
If you guys don't know, when you stream it live, the video lags sometimes. That's why it's kind of tough. The video lags when y'all stream it sometimes. But let's continue, CJ.
Yeah. So let me cue it back up.
In a different light here. Just a couple other things.
Right here. So when we look at this, Nick, look at foreign policy. When we're talking about a war economy no longer paying dividends in the poll numbers. Look at this. Foreign policy. 60% disapproval. Look at Hamas, 60% disapproval. That's everywhere. That means that's including Ukraine. That's including your policy on, they keep saying the Indo-Pacific. When you hear them say that, that means war with China. Okay, that's what that means. And then you're talking about the Middle East, and this last thing that just happened. And I'm saving that topic for you to cover because I know I'm almost sure you're going to cover that topic of this last strike that they made. So I saved that topic for you. Go ahead.
The funny thing about these numbers is that's the ceiling. It doesn't get better. Like, you guys realize the hardest part we have as anti-imperialists is the education part, like getting people on our side. Like, and I am maybe a little bit too optimistic, but I'm seeing what's happening with the Israel war. I've seen the Ukraine war fall apart, and now I'm gonna be honest, I'm feeling a little bit more optimistic about China now because I think it's only a matter of time. I just saw a story. I didn't have time to make a segment where in Taiwan the House Speaker is pro-China. The Taiwanese people is largely rejecting the anti-China narrative. Now the anti-China president won, but CJ, they had multiple candidates in the race. Mainstream media is not talking about this. The anti-China candidate won, but he only had like 37% of the vote. The rest of the coalition are people who are like, all right, we need to have normal relationship with China, which means only like 37, 40% of the Taiwanese people are going along with this bullshit at most. And then when you look at the legislator, the reason why they have a speaker that is pro-China, because that reflects the overall will of Taiwan, where most people want normalized relations. Even in polls, 80% of people in Taiwan want normalized status quo relationship. Now, I don't want to paint a different picture. I want you guys to understand. Taiwan is not pro-China. Like, there are a lot of people who have anti-China sentiments, but they acknowledge that working with China economically is good for the current status quo. That is not what the United States want. The overall point I am making is that the United States is losing credibility with each loss. Like, these losses there's consequences to them. You know what I mean? I covered maybe a few weeks ago on Nick and Knight how European leaders, I don't know to believe it or not, I'll leave it to you guys, but a lot of these people's like, I thought the United States really cared about protecting sovereignty and war crimes because of the Ukraine thing. They fell for like, and once again, they probably bullshitting, but I think there's some of them that like, hey, when the United States say they hate Putin because of war crimes, I decided to side with them because I think they stand up for what's right. Those same politicians now said, after they see what happened in Gaza, they are disillusioned because they thought the United States really meant that shit. They are now realizing they were being used as pawns. Once again, morons. If only you were watching RBN, you would knew you was being used by the United States. But the point, they have lost so much credibility, and I am optimistic about China because I think the American people, I think the world is not going to allow this escalation that they desperately want out of China here. But anyway, I'll pass back to you, CJ, and we're going to talk more about this when we get to the Iran segment. I only have one segment today because I think this video is going to be tough to get through when I get to it. So, CJ, I'll pass to you.
All right. So let's speed this up. A couple of more
things to get through
here
on the foreign policy. Again, Israel, Hamas, center stage in the world picture right now. Overall, big disapproval for Biden on foreign policy, particularly on Israel, Hamas. That's particularly acute among the youngest voters, 18 to 34-year-olds. We have them tied, Trump versus Biden, and a lot of those Biden voters, 18 to 34. They say they don't like Biden. They just don't like Trump more.
It's this type of erosion among.
Trump has just as many support from people under 34, Nick. You know, when's the last time a Republican nominee has had that, been able to say that? I can't even, maybe George Bush, maybe. Definitely not the last couple of people running. And then look at the independent number, but go ahead.
And what's sad about that is Trump isn't killing it with young people. There are a lot of people who will misread that. Not us, right? Not CJ, not us. A lot of people will misread this as saying, look at how popular Trump is with young people. But they're talking about the people who are going to vote in a general election. We have a historic amount of young people that are like, fuck this shit. So the reason why Trump is doing as well as Biden, the numbers are so close, is because young people left the Democrats, not join the Republicans. I know that may be obvious to some. I just want to make that point because I promise you guys, you're going to hear a lot of people misrepresent what this poll actually is. A lot of people are going to say, look, Trump is killing the game. No, this is a battle of apathy. Who's gonna piss off people the least? That's what this competition is about. Let's continue, CJ.
Yeah. So if you imagine, now actually, I need to give an example. Let's a couple more numbers and let's see what's the next one is.
That really worries Democrats.
And it is the area too. We say where Democrats think there might be opportunity. They think they can get more young voters motivated to vote. Maybe not by being for Biden, but by being against Trump. This is one area they think they can improve on and maybe make this race a little different. But the other one to key in on too, independents. Trump looked at that with a 19-point advantage. Also, keep in mind, that shows you a lot of independents look very open to potentially another choice if something were to emerge. And also,
real quick thought on the independent thing.
You need to go back to that graphic.
It's all good because you guys seen it. But you guys see how I have the position where if you're independent and you vote duopoly, you're not independent. Do anyone disagree? Because
I agree with that.
It's annoying as hell. Because I would get enthusiastic, CJ. I would see these polls, and this is like when I was like a sweet summer child, super like third party takeover is gonna happen any moment now. Because I'll see these polls where 50% of Americans are registered independent. I'm like, yes, here we come. And then these people will vote Democrat and Republican. And I'm asking chat, anyone, can someone explain this to me? Are you registering independent because you're embarrassed to say you're Republican and Democrat? Like, and if you're independent, and there are a lot of independents that do that, they're like, well, I'm a free thinker. Sometimes I vote Democrat, sometimes I vote Republican. Guys, you realize they're the dumbest people in politics because they believe the duopoly so much that they like both teams. Because at least if you're a partisan, you're like, nigga, at least I hate this side so much that I'm gonna side with the other side. The independents that vote both parties, they are so fucking brainwashed. They're like, nigga, some Republicans are good, some Democrats are good. Like, you're such an establishment fucking weasel. That's my bit on that. Let's continue. But independents that vote duopoly are fucking useless, man. They are so useless to me. Let's continue.
Yeah. Now on to our next receipt here, and this is where. Now that was our longest receipt. Now I'm going to start playing a couple of 1-minute videos because it's essential to get to.
I'm glad you're playing this one.
Kind of narrow down the point. Now you let me know because I am going to skip around. Let me know if I don't play a part. Like if you want to play a part that I haven't played yet. But let me
you
go
good,
to
you
this.
Good. I'm glad you're playing this because this is one of the videos. Like, damn, I wish I had time to do a segment on this one. But go ahead, CJ.
Yeah, but I think it fits here in the presentation. And let me say this: from Afghanistan to Ukraine to Israel to the Middle East, Joe Biden's numbers are underwater in virtually every conflict that the United States is involved in. That's very unusual for a country that is built on a war economy. And this two segments or these 2 points that is going to be made first by Al Sharpton and then the Bush era person who worked in the Bush administration. Her name is Elise. I can't remember her last name, but not Elise Stefanik, but who's on Morning Joe. They both make a point, and I was shocked to hear this on Morning Joe. To be quite frank with you, at first I was like, wow, I can't believe they're actually saying this. But to me, it's an acknowledgement that wow, our propaganda is not working. We need to start going with some of these narratives that the people are believing and seeing if we can massage them to come if we go with some of their narratives. Now, this first one is Al Sharpton. Let's listen to what he says here.
Politics Nation, Reverend Al Sharpton. Rev, I want to talk about the wars. There are a couple of wars that are raging right now. It's distracting for people. And you brought it up the other day on our show that you have people saying, hey, listen, I support the president, but we're spending a lot of money overseas. I look at the news. There's a lot of news about what's going on overseas. I want people to help me here at home. You're hearing that. And I'm just wondering how much, despite a strong economy, how much are these wars distracting from what the president's doing?
I think a lot of it is distracting. When people look at the fact that you see the economy may be inching up, but prices are not going down, and people are still kind of trying to make ends meet. And then they see these billions of dollars going abroad, even for legitimate reasons. They say, but what about me? Why are we spending all of this money, whether it's in Ukraine, whether it's in the Middle East, whether it's wherever? And it seems like I feel like I'm a second thought. And I think the politics of that is reflected by these startling polls for the Biden camp this weekend. Is people feel neglected. It's not that people may disagree that we should be on the right side of international conflicts, but people want to feel like
now he's obviously part of it. What he's saying, like people do feel neglected, but they are also against the wars. Like it's both. Now he's trying to be nice and give the nice path for why people aren't going with Joe Biden. But go ahead, you were going to chime in too.
Yeah, he's also trying to be nice to their feelings. Cause he said people feel neglected. Like you gotta see these. I hate fence sitters. Are you gonna share your opinion, sir? Isn't that why you're there? People are feeling. What is your assessment? I would say people are neglected by our government because we are sending billions of dollars to Israel while we're not taking care of people in our community. That is what people in our community is saying, Al Sharpton. Even the people I may disagree with on immigration, their message is the government do not care about me. They care about these other projects and not me. Why aren't you taking our side? Why are you fence sitting? Listen to how he's talking about this. people feel like this, and I'm just describing in a very neutral tone. Like, you guys see this detachment from the news that I can't do. This is why I'm not like a guy, if you want to be like a news person generally. I'm not a politician. I'm not a guy for that, because I have a hard time detaching myself from these stories the way they do. But let's continue.
Oh, you mean you are a human with a human heart? Is that what you mean, Nick? Let me fast forward it now. So to just to kind of wrap up what he said there, he's basically saying people are feeling neglected, and that is the reason why they're supporting them. And I mean, it's a flimsy reason. Of course, people also don't support the Israel-Hamas war. That's why they're out protesting, and he can pretend like he doesn't know that. But let's now move to this. At least I don't remember her last name, but let's move to this part, and let's to what she says here. Now, what Morning Joe does is he prefaced this because he knows she's gonna say this. He knows, it feels like he knows what she's gonna say. So he prefaced it by saying, I understand you're a libertarian, to make sure his audience knows, like, don't get frightened, donors, okay? She's a libertarian. She has to say this, and she's going to say this. It feels like that's what he does. Actually, let me rewind it a little bit so you can hear him actually say that part. Let's play it here.
And for the libertarian and many Americans on foreign policy, there's a lot in the inbox right now. Right? You got inflation. You've got all these other issues. You've got crime. They're processing that. Then you have Israel and Gaza on TV all the time. You've got the Ukraine war. You've got China getting ready to move on Taiwan. Too many fronts. Too much chaos. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Are bombs the U.S.'s greatest export? You know, you hear from some more hawkish congressional members, oh, but it's fueling job growth and arms factories in the U.S. And that argument just makes me a little sick and turns my stomach. Right now, we don't really have a coherent grand strategy of why we are fighting in the Middle East, why we still have bases in Jordan where 3 Georgia National Guardsmen and women are killed, why we are fighting this proxy war with Iran, but really in 3 other countries, not exactly with Iran. And then what is our strategy? We're giving Israel, we provide around 15% of their defense budget in a normal year, yet we're using none of that leverage to, what's happening in Gaza with the slaughter of children and innocents. And I'm all for, I think Israel deserved to have a robust response to kill Hamas. But when it goes beyond the laws of proportionality, we really need to question ourselves as a nation and what values we are supporting around the world.
Did you hear what she said? It was a lot there. She talked about the genocide. Now, if you heard, she skipped over a word. She said, to see what's happening in Gaza. She didn't want to say the word genocide. It's almost like she caught herself from overly describing it. And then she made sure to say, but you can defend yourself. She made sure to say that for the Zionists to make sure she didn't lose her job. But that was sort of, it's not astonishing necessarily on RBN. It's astonishing for me to hear what she's saying specifically on Morning Joe, knowing who watches Morning Joe, when she says how she described donors, because who she's describing as donors talk about how weapons manufacturers profit. She's like, that's sickening. That's crazy to me how they said that. But go ahead.
So Morning Joe is the show of the establishment, and I have a theory on why she allowed to say this, and it's kind of what I'm going to be discussing in my segment later. How when they do these segments, like people don't watch these shows. There's a show where establishment people watch, Wall Street people watch this, people who work in administrations. Like, this is a show quite literally for the professional managerial class. So when you see like Joe does a segment on foreign policy, I'm gonna show you a segment with Fareed Zakaria. This segment is, hey, this is how we message about the war. I am going to show you how we talk about this war as a ruling class. So when these shows are almost like a meeting of minds. Like, this is the messaging that we want to get out. But every once in a while, they'll bring someone like this on so they can show the ruling class the counter arguments. So they bring this person on like, hey guys, watch out. This is the counter arguments to the bullshit that we are doing. We need to be aware of it. So she comes on and bring on the libertarian argument. So the ruling class like, all right, this is This is the counter argument to our regime. We got to be aware of it because we are losing ground. Like it's the same way, like whenever like there's like a general Republican Democrat issue, they'll bring someone on to talk about the issue. Like it's like narrative training for the establishment. And I'm going to get into that more in detail when I get to the Vaiz Zakaria segment. Because when you listen to him talk about like Iran and Syria and Yemen, it's training other people to listen how to talk about this issue. And she's here to provide the counter argument. So people understand, like, all right, we got to be ready for these arguments that she's laying out. But let's continue, CJ.
Absolutely. She finishes there. So let's get to the next receipt. Like I said, these are just some quick points that I want to touch upon in the larger presentation. This next one is, I almost thought you said Fareed Shakir. I was like, man, do we have the same clip? But you're talking about not former campaign manager. You're talking about the guy who has the CNN.
Oh, yeah, the
okay,
CNN
so,
guy.
you know,
yeah.
So because I have a CNN clip. Now, this is former Bernie Sanders campaign manager that I'm talking about here. And let me read to you what I said about this. Fareed Shakir boldly stomps for Biden's economy. So we've been talking about this war economy. We've been talking about the markers and how the markers of the economy is not indicating, or not an indicator to say how the actual economy is doing. Now, former Bernie Sanders campaign manager says, no. Bidenomics is doing great, and we should support him for that. So let's listen to this short clip of former Bernie Sanders campaign manager make a point, and then there's a couple of other points that are crucial that we're also going to listen to.
You got to make sure that voters hear from you on this.
But also that those jobs numbers, those wage numbers are not on autopilot. I think it gives a sense to a lot of voters, oh, well, they must be happening absent Joe Biden. No, in fact, it was his policy choices and solutions. And the question is, which policy direction do you want?
It was his policy choices and solutions that brought about the 300 and I think it was 35,000 jobs. My question would be, what policy and solution there is? And this is what the ruling elites try to fool the worker about. This is in order to sell you that their policies are different, and when they get in, it changes, and it has the ability to immediately affect you like it does. No, it doesn't. You guys have the same policy, and you're just, it's just a different face for the same dictatorship of capital. So when he says here, the Biden economy and his policies are the reason why the economy is producing these numbers, I would ask, what policies are that? Because what policies? I haven't heard any policies that have been implemented that said this is the reason why he has 335,000 new jobs. But the larger point that I wanted to make here is that this is the professional managerial class left. And it's a great illustration of the NATO left, the Bernie Sanders industrial complex, quite literally Bernie Sanders campaign manager. In order to get a seat at this table, he had to make a deal and say, I'm willing to come on here and say some good things and put my credibility on the line for Biden, as long as I have a seat at the table. So he has a seat at the table. Now, the deal is he has to stomp for a lot of the establishment things, and that's what he's doing here. But in exchange for what is my question? Is it for Medicare for all? Is it for a vote for Medicare for all? Is it for minimum wage? Is it for climate change? Like, what are you getting in exchange for selling out like this professional class, the professional managerial class? But let him finish the point, and then one of the Republican strategists makes a great point about the democracy argument. I also want everybody to hear.
what is Donald Trump's solution right now? I assume he's going to campaign on tax cuts for the rich. I assume he's going to say, I want to repeal a lot of the direction that Joe Biden has offered through the Inflation Reduction Act and federal investments. But I don't know. No, because he talks about court cases most of the time.
Yeah, and I also think that it's Joe Biden has to get out there, but they just had record numbers of student loan debts canceled. For where are those individuals to be telling my life has changed?
Are you serious?
Whose student loans have been canceled, and it is
Nick, what is the percentage? Didn't you say it's like 10% people go to college or 15%? It's a low number. I can't off the top of my head. I don't know what the number is, but go ahead.
And then I know Sabby did a great report on this. She does good work on education stuff. Like when you look at the means tested bullshit they did with student loans, there's a very small percent, like only like less than 1%, 2% of people actually got their debt like canceled and wiped out. So then they try to pretend it's way more. Let me see if I can find a receipt, because I remember reading this a very long time ago. I remember Sabby talking about it. So they pretend like all these people, like, no, it was actually a very small number. They're like, Joe Biden canceled $1 billion, $2 billion in student loans. Like, bro, that's like less than 1%. But what I roll my eyes on, and we can continue, you see, like these black surrogate, these sellout Democrats, they're here to talk about how Joe Biden failed with his messaging. He's like, why we need to change the way we lie to black people about what we are doing for them. Why aren't these surrogates? And I am taking myself out of this. Like, even if I was like black Democrat, you know what I mean? Why aren't they saying what we need to do? We need to provide something for our community so they can come out and vote for us. You know, these black people never say that. I'm a Democrat, and I'm concerned, man. What we need to do right now, we really need to pass some pro-black agenda, because we need to get some black people to vote for us. So we need to do something for them. They never say that. They say, how can we change our messaging? Why aren't the black men getting it? These people, they drive me crazy. But let's continue, CJ.
Absolutely. And I let it continue for about another minute.
Shifted the trajectory of their life to be able to go and purchase a home because their debt to income ratio is different. That is a Joe Biden surrogate in their community. And these are black voters. These are young voters. These are people who are millennials, and everybody, I mean, we're 40 at this point, millennials. So we're not, we're trying to go into a new phase in our life. And there is a real population out there that could be saying, I got a job because of Joe Biden's policies. And that's what the campaign needs to be doing.
I hope the Supreme Court covered their ears while you were talking, because I was stunned by this tweet this week that Joe Biden put out. The Supreme Court blocked me, but I
saw your reply.
But I found another way. I mean, if Donald Trump had said or tweeted something like that, y'all be hanging off the chandeliers.
Or a Texas governor.
I mean, it was kind of stunning to me that they decided to go down the road. This democracy question, though, that you brought up, it splits pretty even in the NBC poll. Joe Biden's got a 37% approval rating, worse going into his election than the last four presidents by a huge number. But he often says Donald Trump is a danger to democracy. If he really believed that, would he be running for re-election? Because right now, he looks like he's the one Democrat that might lose to Donald Trump. And so if you're an average voter and you hear this comment about, well, he's a danger to democracy, then why are you pursuing this re-election campaign that seems like right now it's on the brink of losing to the person that you say is going to destroy democracy?
Because he's the only person who has beat him.
But that's where I wanted to end it. You see that devastating point he just made? And guess what, Nick? Guess who came in and had to come in and save the fucking master? The fucking master had to come. Oh, come here, master. Watch out, master. Let me take the bullet for you, master. That's what she just did. Let's play that part again.
Yeah, I want to hear it again, because that is very interesting.
It's a devastating point that he makes here. And then, of course, the Negro servant has to come in and shield Joe Biden. So let's actually, let me go back 30 seconds instead of 15.
To Donald Trump. And so if you're an average voter and you hear this comment about, well, he's a danger to democracy, then why are you pursuing this re-election campaign that seems like right now it's on the brink of losing to the person that you say is going to destroy democracy?
Because he's the only person who has beat him.
But Nikki Haley's right. Voters are not enthusiastic about this campaign.
That was an awkward silence. Anytime you say a devastating truth about Joe Biden, I notice the liberal side kind of gets silenced. Now she tried to have a comeback. It didn't land well because that was a devastating blow, and that's what we should be presenting to people who are trying to vote shame us. It's not our job. And I love what the mayor of Dearborn was saying this. It's like he says, as an example, when I run, I don't say it's up to them to come vote for me. It's up for me to persuade people. So it's not up to us. It's up to Joe Biden. So the question is, and this is how the mayor of Dearborn said it. So the question is aligning with Netanyahu and aligning with this genocide, is that more important than democracy?
Yes,
and that's how all workers should be presenting it. Is that then just like this guy just presented? Go ahead, Nick, if you were going to tell me. I can't see you.
That's the point I used to yell at Bernie people about when I had my giant divorce with the Bernie left, where they was advocating voting for Biden and lesser two evils. And I'm like, I can't get with Trump derangement syndrome, because if Trump was as dangerous as you guys claim he is, you guys would make concessions in order to quote unquote save our republic. If Donald Trump was such a danger, you guys be like, all right, I fucking despise Medicare for all. I hate it. But since we got to stop Trump, I wanted to do that because Trump is so dangerous. If Trump was really that dangerous, that would what you guys would do. And hell, you probably would trick me like, nigga, that nigga must be dangerous. They giving us fucking healthcare. You know what I mean? The fact that they didn't even try to do that. The fact that they are willing to sacrifice our country to someone who they deem a tyrant to bend to please Netanyahu in Israel. That's how I'm like, I don't even believe your claim that Trump is dangerous. Let's continue, CJ.
Yeah, so this is the last video before I pass to you, Nick. This here, I wanted to make sure I included in this segment, and I'll set it up this way. In a war economy, actually, I have this written down. Maybe I'm gonna make sure I say this the right way because it's important. Here we go. A democracy built on or maintained by a war economy cannot or will not deliver democracy effectively. And that's what we're in. We're in a war economy, and you notice they're not delivering democracy effectively to many groups. So because of this, marginalized groups like Black folks do not buy into the concept of democracy the same way as privileged people do. So this part right here, as a part of this presentation, speaks to that, and it's at 55. This is Ali Velshi. If you didn't see, it was pretty terrible. They had a Black reaching out to Black male sort of show where the whole point was, let's do something. We're reaching out to Black males. Let's speak to Black males. Guess who they had on there, Nick? A bunch of millionaires, lawyers, and you guys going to barbershops, right? You got to go speak to people. Nick, they had Al Sharpton on there, sir. They had Michael Steele on there, sir.
This is about to be pure comedy.
What the fuck is this? But
this is about to be a sitcom, bro. This is about to be pure comedy. I haven't seen this, but Jesus Christ.
But to that point, what they do in this segment, I wanted to play for you, and it's at 5508. Okay, so let's watch this part on the Ali Velshi show.
Then you had the ability to discipline your children or discipline.
Yeah, whenever I see Ali Velshi, I know some shit. Ali Velshi been going crazy on foreign policy recently as well. He's like one of the people I had to see. I've seen so many of these crazy segments on Iran and Syria. Like, I have a hard time even picking which one. I picked Vahid Zakaria because he's like the voice of the establishment. But I could win with Ali Velshi. I could win with all of them.
I think this is.
Make sure we I can read the super chats while you look for it as well. Let me read
the world and our future can be daunting.
Yeah, if you would, go ahead. Look for that super chat. Shit,
I'll read from the beginning. Thank for $2, Anthony. Excellent show, Nick and CJ. I appreciate the solidarity. Actually, I'll show you guys this as well. Since we just talked about more enjoy, CJ, get that ready. You guys hear Biden watches? Yes. I actually wanted to. Actually, I'm gonna show you guys this after CJ get that ready. Look at this. Have you seen this, CJ? Here it is.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I had to say, inside Biden's obsession with Morning Joe, Remember how we said the reason why we cover Morning Joe more than any other one? Because I can't stomach a lot of them. You guys notice I don't do propaganda reports on like Laura Ingraham, right? You notice that, right? I don't do Laura Ingraham segments. I rarely talk about great. Like, there's some people that like
It's
so
hard.
unserious.
It's hard. It's
Like,
hard
there's
to
just
do her.
people that are unserious, even though they get more views in them. They're unserious, so I don't view it worth my time to break them down. The reason why Morning Joe is worth breaking down, even though they may get less viewers than them, because Morning Joe is quite literally the message of the establishment. Like, whatever you hear from Morning Joe is coming directly from the war machine, coming directly from the duopoly. And now you have this story that came out inside Biden's obsession with Morning Joe.
Oh,
So,
God.
CJ, what they was doing on Morning Joe and all these propaganda segments we have done, they would give Joe Biden morning prep talks, essentially. Because in this story, they explain how Joe Biden talked to Joe Scarborough on the phone all the time. They're very close to Biden. So remember those segments where Joe Scarborough would be like, man, people keep underestimating Joe Biden. Don't worry, Joe Biden, you got this. People keep doubting Joe Biden. Joe Biden's such an underdog. He's doing those performances knowing that Joe Biden's watching him. When he's saying, man, people keep doubting Joe Biden's economy. Biden know what he's doing in Ukraine. This motherfucker's giving Joe Biden a prep talk live on TV. And this story is glorious. I want to do the main segment because I get things can mess up sometimes. So we get CJ can put out any moment now.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do just a quick mini segment in between that. Remember what they said about Donald Trump, which I believe is 100% true? Because I don't believe these people who are called our presidents actually do anything. They are puppets in a suit. That's why when they say, oh, the president's too busy to talk to the press. Bullshit. These motherfuckers have their advisors. They have the people in their cabinet and staff. They do everything. They're the actor to show up in front of TV. What they really do, they sit home and they watch TV. And that's what Trump was criticized for. Donald Trump was criticized for being this Fox News watcher. They like he's obsessed with watching Fox News. Two sides of the same coin, my friends. Blue MAGA, red MAGA. Joe Biden also watching too much TV. So that's pretty dangerous, isn't that? To have this commander-in-chief who is supporting a genocidal ethno-state that is stuck in an echo chamber. He watches this shit every morning. Joe Scarborough does segments every day talking about how Joe Biden, you're so great, you're so handsome. Essentially, this is another reason why Joe Scarborough is worth covering because this is quite literally state media.
I saw that
5-minute segment.
I saw. Did you see the comment? Somebody had made a comment earlier. Oh no, yeah, the super chat. Yeah, you saw it. So yeah, that's
why I covered it. Sam, they talked to Sam. He's a friend of the show.
Yeah. So Ellie Belchi, I guess that's two.
Go ahead, CJ. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can play this real quick. So Ellie Belchi, turns out he has two shows on the weekend. So I had the wrong. He has one from 11 to 12 and then one from 12 to 1. But anyway, now I have the right one. So let's play these last two. There's like 30-second clips here. One of this person, you already know her. If you don't recognize her, this is Jasmine Crockett, the famous Negro servant that we've already covered many times. They love her in the establishment. Now, Jasmine Crockett proves right here she is I'm making up this word, cooniest Negro servant. And Jasmine Crockett says, go ahead.
CJ, I'm curious. Just before we do this segment, do you think Jasmine Crockett is effective? Because I'm kind of torn on this because she's kind of dangerous. Do you agree or disagree with that? Because the way she talks, and there's a reason why she's pushing her. If you don't know, she became famous during the January 6th trials and then during the Hunter Biden trial, where she sounds like a fucking sister. If you know what I mean, you know what I mean, right, CJ? Yeah. And she repeats the most shit-lib Democratic Party talking points, but I think she can do it in a way that sounds like legit. Maybe I'm giving her too much credit, but CJ, what do you think before we get into the segment?
Because I have the same thing written down. I have the same thing written down that this is what I wrote down. Jasmine Crockett for the next 2 years will likely be one of the and then I stopped because I didn't have a description. I wrote some profanity and I was trying to come up with a different word, but let me come up with it now. But she's the one that's going to be the most dangerous. She's the one. She's going to be like the black AOC, the black version of AOC that's able to say shit and get people to do
She's
things.
Dianne
Now
Feinstein.
listen. Yes.
No, guys, trust me. Dianne Feinstein was the young, attractive politician. I know that sounds crazy, but in the 80s, that's who she was. That's who Nancy Pelosi was in the set. She was a young, pretty, up-and-coming politician, and then they become these fucking cogs in the machine who we can't get rid of. And the way they are pushing her to the moon, like she's on TV more than any other Democrat ever since January 6th. Like she's the next big thing. I'm telling you. I'm glad that we're on the same wavelength because I've been thinking about this for a while. But let's continue the segment.
Yeah, and you see how she has Shirley Chisholm in the background. Just the co-opting. I hate that part. But anyway, listen to what she says there. It's a very short, like 30 seconds. I just wanted you guys to hear this part before the next part, where she's pushing again. First, we had former Bernie Sanders campaign manager talking about how the Bidenomics is great. Now, listen to her description of Bidenomics.
So let's examine that a little more, because in 2020 it was a battle over the soul of America. Remarkable idea upon which to campaign. We had seen Charlottesville, we had seen the growing white nationalism and racism, and people, as you said, made the mature decision. That decision, it would occur to me, is yet clearer today, regardless of whether your main issue is the climate or immigration or Israel, Gaza. On none of these issues, or reproductive rights and banning books, on none of these issues would Donald Trump provide a better solution than would Joe Biden.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. And right now, the president has been pushing forward with this idea of finish the job. In his first 2 years, when he had a Democratic House, had a Democratic Senate, he was able to get monumental change done. Now, as you and I both know, just because you sign a bill into law doesn't mean that people will feel it on the.
So, Nick, you can have monumental change while at the same time people can't feel it, Nick. Does that make sense? That sounds like the Russian thing. That Russia is strong and weak at the same time. Like, that makes no sense. But she is so dangerous because the establishment loves her. Even at the end of this segment, I'm not going to play it, the rest of it. He says, wow, I wish we can have multiply you. Something to that effect, like have more of you.
Bro,
they absolutely love her.
Bro, white liberal soccer moms think she's the future Malcolm X, bro. Like, they love her. Like, she's a superstar on social media. Like, whenever she get these performances, Morning Joe and whoever the people watching give her like a damn near a standing applause. She's dangerous, man. She's gonna be a threat for a very long time. But let's continue, CJ.
All right, so this is the last part. Then I pass to you. This is how what was supposed to happen before I couldn't find it. This part, he breaks down what I broke down earlier, which is basically if you can't a war democracy. I'm sorry, a war economy. Let me start over. A war economy that supports the democracy. Actually, let me say this over. I'm fucking this up. All right, here we go. A democracy built or maintained by a war economy cannot or will not deliver democracy effectively. And because of this, marginalized groups like Black folks do not buy into the concept of democracy. Now, this video is what goes with that preface, and now let's listen.
Why Tremaine and I did what we did with respect to this special. We wanted to present different perspectives in an objective and balanced manner. I also think that in terms of the larger conversation about democracy, Ali, people are missing a point here, and this is very important. If you do not feel like democracy has served you well or protected you, or that you've had full access to it, trying to sell someone on the defense or preservation of democracy is not going to be an effective pitch, because it's not something that has ever mattered to you in that way. You have to, in that messaging, communicate, number one, a level of accountability that we have missed the mark before, and we know that we have more work to do, as well as here's what's going to be different. Right
now, the reason I want to stop here, and I can stop here, I don't have to have him go on, because he does two things, Nick. He says something good, and then he goes on to show the establishment how to trick Black people into believing that you are down with this. You see what the Black bourgeoisie does, and this is why I say they're dangerous, because they have enough lived experience to where they can harken back memory and speak about the hood and have the vernacular and all that stuff, but they've been trained in the establishment enough to know they're not going to be doing none of that radical shit. They're just going to fall in line with the establishment. And that's what he's doing, which is devastating because he gives them a gem that, hey, trying to sell democracy is going to end. That ain't really going to fly with black people because you understand what democracy looks like for us. So this is what you do. Do this messaging. That's not what he should be saying. He should be saying, this is the policy that you need to change. That's what he should be saying.
Yeah, you
nailed it. Any last words on that? Go ahead.
Yeah, you nailed it. And that's why he's dangerous. Like, he sounds like he's saying something good, but he actually pretty deplorable. He actually a kind of a horrible person. Because what he's telling the establishment, like you said, is, hey, yo, this campaign of promising democracy, that shit's not going to work. Hey, listen to my suggestion on how to lie to my people. Hey, trust me, I know the hood, bro. The hood is not buying that democracy shit, bro. This is how you trick them. Deplorable person. Even though it sounds like he's saying something good, but he's not. But I'm gonna read last few super chats and then I'm gonna do my segment. And then
we can do that.
And I'll probably gotta get out here after that. Because my segment not too long. And as you guys heard from Zoya, I have Garland Nixon at Nick and Knight. I don't know if you're joining us. Nick and Knight with Garland Nixon. And we also have a Elite Camp on Wednesday as well. We had a pretty loaded week. Banger after banger after banger, my friends. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. Let me pull this video up here. Here it is. Fareed Zakaria. And bro, this weekend it was something else because you had Biden escalate his attacks, and I played like 2 segments from MSNBC and Fox News, respectively, on Nick at noon on Saturday. And dude, I got like 10 videos booked. I'm like, I don't even know why I got them saved because there's no way I'm getting through them. I couldn't pick what segment to do. The propaganda from our government about what's going on in the Middle East in the war shows that we are the most propagandized country in the world. I know other countries engage in propaganda. I know Israel is pretty bad. I know the UK is pretty bad. That is what people say, but no one propaganda is worse than the United States. I stand on that. Other people engage, but it's amateur shit. Israel propaganda is so amateur that even their own settler colonialists get upset with their government every once in a while because they see through the propaganda. I've seen countless videos, and I'm going to show you guys this one. Countless videos where they are just outright lying and misrepresenting what this conflict is about. And I'm going to have a lot to say, so I'm not going to do a long preface. I need to stop doing that sometimes because there's going to be a lot to say with this video, so I'm going to let it play. And I'm sure you're going to have a lot to say too. What Fareed Zakaria says in his 5-minute segment is absurd. Look at the title alone. In responding to Iran, U.S. should take the Godfather's advice. I clicked on this. I'm like, how absurd is this going to get? Pretty damn absurd. That's the answer.
Here's my take. It's perhaps fitting that the line that best describes U.S. foreign policy toward the Middle East over the last 15 years comes from The Godfather. In the third movie, the aging Michael Corleone has been trying to distance himself from his old mafia businesses and ties, but inevitably crises flare up that demand his attention. He cries,
"Just when I thought I was out, they pulled me back in."
President Biden might be thinking just that as he responded militarily to the recent attack on U.S. forces that claimed the lives of 3 American soldiers.
Sir, you cannot say that Joe Biden thought he was out as he had soldiers illegally occupying another country. Like this, what they were saying is pretending that the United States was just, we're just minding our business. We're illegally occupying the country. We're just minding our business. Doing nothing wrong here. And then we attacked out for no reason. Oh my God, these bad people. They attacked it for no reason. I thought we was out. Nigga, if we was out, why are these soldiers in Syria? Why do we have military bases all over the Middle East if we was out? CJ, anything you want to add? I'm gonna let it continue because there's gonna be a lot more absurd. This Godfather comparison is not gonna go as well as you think it's gonna go.
And I do want to add because I before my transition, I was big Godfather. I mean, I still like the Godfather. I still like some concepts in it. But yeah, so I know it back and forth. Like I have the trilogy, I have all kind of behind the scenes, and where is the United States trying to go legit? Where are they trying to go legit? Because that was the whole concept. I'm trying to go legit and get out. That's not what happened here, to your point. So not only did they not get out, they didn't try to go legit either. There's no legit of the United States. They're in Syria. They're in the Ukraine. They're in the Middle East. They're everywhere. There's no legitimacy. Or NATO is another one. There's no legitimacy about our foreign policy. But go ahead.
Look, it gets even more absurd. There's a reason why I picked this out of many of them. let's continue with this. Take that. But Sicario probably and his writers probably wrote this, and they probably thought they made gold. They probably thought this segment was gonna be a banger, and we're gonna just dissect this shit because this shit was so absurd. Let's continue.
Was out. They pulled me back in.
President Biden might be thinking just that as he responded militarily to the recent attack on U.S. forces that claimed the lives of 3 American soldiers in Jordan. Ever since George W. Bush's second term, American administrations have been seeking to reduce their exposure to the Middle East. The argument makes logical sense. The U.S. imports only a tiny amount of oil from the region. Its efforts at regime change and reform in Iraq backfired spectacularly. The most important challenges to the American-led international order come from Russia in Europe and China in Asia.
Where'd I start? For one, someone demonetized their fucking YouTube channel. How the hell are they allowed to go on air and tell such a blatant lie like the United States is not interested in the Middle East, like we don't have military bases all over the region? And then you hear what he said here. So he talked about fucking pirating crimes, casualties. Like, the United States, we only export a small amount of oil in the region. What do you mean by that, sir? Do you hear what he said, CJ? I'm going to play it again just in case you guys didn't hear the highly illegal shit that he just casually endorsed on national television.
It's logical sense. The U.S. imports only a tiny amount of oil from the region.
The United States illegally steals 80% of Syria's oil production. What are you talking about, sir? And then he has this perception pretending that we are leaving Iraq. Do you know the Iraq government voted the United States to leave 2 times over the last 4 years? And then the United States decided to stay despite the fact that Iraq government was asking them to leave. Does that sound like a Godfather who went to get out, CJ?
Nope.
Nigga, the Godfather in the United States was at war with another Godfather. The other Godfather's like, please stop going to war with us. Can you leave us alone? That motherfucker's like, nah, nigga, we going to war. That's the Godfather of the United States. Is why you not trying to get out? This is a very important point to make because people keep getting it wrong, not maliciously, but they're getting it wrong. They say the United States bombed Syria, Iraq, and these quote-unquote Iran proxies as an act of deterrence. CJ, so they bomb Yemen for deterrence. This is what they've been telling you for weeks now. How does that make sense? As if they're going to bomb the Ansar line. They're like, oh, well, we got time to pack it up. Time to pack it up. These niggas, we didn't know they're going to retaliate. Time to pack it up. As if these militants that being bombed in their sovereign country is going to be like, oh, shit, they bombed us back. Time to quit. Bombing escalates, fam. It does not deter. It's one of the biggest lies they tell you. They don't bomb a region to deter war. They bomb a country in order to get war. This a very important distinction to make. Go ahead, CJ.
And they know this, and this is the reason why they pepper. This is the reason why you will hear certain words always attached to a military phrasing. And in this war, we are hearing retaliatory attacks. Retaliatory. They keep having to always, add this. With Ukraine, it was unprovoked war. Anytime they're having to always insert an adjective when you're always describing, it's the opposite of what they're trying to convince you of. But go ahead, Nick.
And you know why Fareed Sicario get paid the big bucks? Because he got all these terms memorized to perfection. Amateur propaganda stumble on the word. You can tell how insecure they are. People like Fareed Sicario, once you make it prime time, if you're Ali Vechi, Fareed Sicario, like it's prime time, you know this stuff, fam. I'm gonna let it continue because there's gonna be a lot more to say.
The U.S. imports only a tiny amount of oil from the region. Its efforts at regime change and reform in Iraq backfired spectacularly. The most important challenges to the American-led international order come from Russia in Europe and China in Asia. The Middle East is a sideshow. But crises come not at times and places of your choosing. And the withdrawal of American power has itself set in play a series of moves that are now shaping the region. As Washington has lost interest in the Middle East, anti-American militias have been gaining strength and influence.
Once again, they tell you stuff that make no sense and people don't even realize it. How does this make sense, CJ? That America lost interest in the region, but there are anti-American presence that's rising. If America had no presence in no interest in the region, if they was leaving, why is there anti-American presence? What caused the anti-American presence, sir? I don't know. It's almost like you guys got military bases and you guys are legally occupying these countries. And then they talk about just the concept of having anti-American sentiments as being a bad thing, as he has a segment where he has unhinged anti-Russian sentiments, unhinged anti-China sentiments. Everyone in the United States has anti-China sentiments, anti-Russian sentiments, but somehow you are a terrorist and you someone we got to take out because you have anti-American sentiments? How is that worth causing a war? Because they don't want us there? I'm going to let it continue.
From the Houthis to Hezbollah to Islamic resistance in Iraq, an umbrella group that is believed to be responsible for the attack that
And I
killed
can't even believe they actually using that word, CJ. I've been noticing that they even call it resistance. Resisting what, sir? Like, it's shocking to me that they even call them resistance fighters. Back in the day, they just call them terrorists. These people upset because we illegally occupy their country. They attack us, so they terrorists. How does that make sense, America? And people just believe this shit. People believe Hezbollah are terrorists. People believe these people who are fighting a country that the United States soldiers had to cross the fucking Atlantic Ocean to be there. Look at the map. Iran is right there. That's Iran's region. If anyone has the right to impose their sovereignty, it's Iran. And these people want to work with Iran. The Ansar Allah explains they don't do business with Iran because they like them, because Iran is one of the only superpowers that helped them in their struggle. So they work with Iran because they're the only country that's standing between U.S. domination and sovereignty and someone who's willing to protect and supply support for people's sovereignty. So they're not like ideologically in line with Iran. They just have one common enemy, the United States, that is doing incredibly illegal stuff here. Which is why I've been extremely hard on these soldiers. And someone mentioned a comment I didn't think of before. Like, if you're a soldier, you are supposed to reject orders that go against international law. So if you're a soldier in Syria, you're supposed to reject orders that send you to occupy the area. You're not a good guy in this situation. The United States are criminals, and people in the region view them as criminals that should be fought against. What do you think would happen if we had Iranian soldiers walking down Main Street in your city? Imagine there's just Russian soldiers in Madison Square Garden. You know how fast they will get fucking yanked? And then people were like, of course we yanked those Russian soldiers at Madison Square Garden. That is what happened in Syria and Iraq all the time. And then they call those people terrorists for defending their sovereignty. Someone explain to me how that makes sense. I'm going to let it continue.
But another thing is, and maybe you could speak to this. It's curious to me that, not curious, I'm just saying that everything is Iran backed. Everything is Iran backed. It's almost like they're foreshadowing that they're about to go to war with Iran because they have to prepare their audience. They have to prepare the listener. If everything that is happening over there, Iran backed that, Iran backed that, Iran backed that, Iran backed that, then who are you going to go to war with? Iran, right? Even though they didn't do any of the stuff, you just say that person now. Why? Now, if you have that philosophy, why don't you report Ukraine, United States backed Ukraine? Why don't you do that? Why don't you say that about all the places that we prop up? We only do that with Iran, and I'm telling you, or maybe you can speak to this. It's specifically because, to me, this is an indication that you want to go to war with Iran. Another person is actually hitting you, but you're saying, I'm not getting you, man, that hit me. The person that told you to come get me. That's what you keep saying. And to me, that's foreshadowing something, but continue. But go ahead.
So CJ, if we was to take what the establishment says at face value. Once again, there's more evidence to say Israel is U.S. backed because we can see everything Israel does is directly provided by the United States. Despite what the media said, you got to know Iran. They say they had nothing to do with any of these attacks. They didn't coordinate it, and there's no reason for us to believe they did. And I'm about to explain. You see how Lindsey Graham and these politicians are so certain that we can defeat Iran in the war? Lindsey Graham recently said, of course we can defeat Iran. No, we can't. So on one hand, CJ, they want to paint Iran as a nation that we can easily defeat. But if everything they claim about Iran is true, Iran is a Middle Eastern superpower, the likes in which we have never seen before, fam. So according to them, you have the Ansar Allah in Yemen. You have militant fighters in Iraq and Syria. You have Assad, a whole-ass government. Yemen, a whole-ass government. Iraq, a whole-ass government that is doing the bidding of Iran. That is a definition of a superpower, sir. If everything you're saying is true. So why would you think that you could ever defeat this amazing, clairvoyant superpower? Apparently, they got the strings and everything, CJ. This is what they say on Fox News all the time. They said, we got to go to Iran because they got the strings and everything. So we're going to defeat them on their territory where they got the hearts and minds of the people. And I'm going based on everything they say, CJ. Everything they say is true. Okay, let's listen to what they say. Iran controls the sovereignty of all these countries that want to take out Israel and the United States. But we think we can defeat this united coalition when we couldn't defeat Yemen and Ansar Allah with the help of Saudi Arabia in a blockade? How the hell do you guys think we could defeat Iran if this what they're saying is the case? What they're saying is not true. The United States has fucked up with this foreign policy over the course of decades and created resistance groups around the world with different cultures, different belief systems. So then because they have a common enemy, they become friends, they become allies. You know, the same thing Western countries do. So it's kind of weird how we become friends with Western countries and people think that normal, and then Arab countries become friends. They're like, oh my God, look at those terrorist congregations together. Look at these terrorists getting together. You know, Iran and Yemen are friends. What's wrong with that, fam? I'm asking you this question right now. What's wrong with these questions? There's a reason why I kept the map up here. You guys see how close Syria and Iraq is? What's wrong with them being closely tied together? Then you have Iran right over there. What's wrong with these people being in coordination together to kick out a legally occupying army? Nothing. There's literally nothing wrong with that, but they paint it as a conspiracy theory. You guys fucked up and you lost the public goodwill of an entire region. So the militants in Syria and Iraq don't have to get direction from Iran to attack soldiers. Once again, I'm gonna go back to this example. I'm sorry I'm being long, but I had to explain this. Remember my example about Russian soldiers in Madison Square Garden? Would the United States need Canada or the UK to tell them to kill those soldiers? No, the United States would do it without the direction of Boris Johnson, the UK, and Canada. Right. If you had the Russian soldiers that was in London, marching in London, would the United States need to tell the UK to kill those soldiers? No. Meanwhile, what they tell you every single day in America is that these militants in Syria and Iran, the Ansar Allah, Hezbollah, they hate the United States troops not because they violate their sovereignty, CJ. It's because Iran told them. CJ, imagine someone broke into your house and then they were like, well, CJ didn't attack me because he wanted to. He did because Nick told him to attack him. Nick had nothing to do with me attacking the guy that broke into the same house. That is what they tell you every single damn day when they talk about Iran. I'm sorry I went long, but I had to explain why it's so absurd that they're saying this, CJ. But let's continue. They're not gonna be a long statement. I gotta leave here soon anyway. So I'm gonna let it play for a bit. I'm gonna try my best because we only got like 4 minutes left, so I gotta speed this segment up. So I'm gonna let it play as much as I can to try to speed this segment up.
The American soldiers in Jordan. Iran is allied to all these groups, which helps it preserve its influence and weight.
You guys see how they show? I'm sorry, but you guys see how they show their military? You guys think that's an accident? They're not showing the infrastructure of the country. They're like, look at the military. Be afraid.
The region. Israel's war against Hamas in Gaza has provided an ideal opportunity for these forces because they can claim to be protesting Israel's actions and thus assert themselves, demonstrate their might, and gain legitimacy. Ironically, the Biden administration, which has been working hard to prevent these militia attacks from turning into something bigger, now needs to decide whether its own retaliation might cause an escalation of hostilities. Biden is under pressure at home from Republicans who will accuse him of looking weak. Senators like Lindsey Graham.
I'll be real quick. On any interruption, I'll be quick. I said this on Saturday. Whenever you hear people in the media call a politician weak because they want to resist war, they are the most evil people in your society. You should never have any reporter call a politician weak. Oh, you're a coward because you don't want to bomb people? Nigga, you're a coward because you're not sending your children out there. Why aren't you fighting? Who the fuck are you to call people cowards? Did what Janine Pirro did on Fox News the other day. She was like, why won't Biden bomb Iran? Is he a coward? Meanwhile, let it continue.
Have been urging him to hit Iran to preserve America's credibility. The Biden response seems to have been careful and measured. A larger attack would be a mistake. These militias thrive on conflict with established armies. The Houthis endured nearly a decade of massive Saudi bombardment and came out largely unscathed. As Henry Kissinger noted in a foreign affairs essay on Vietnam.
Oh my God! Can you pause it?
Oh my God! I forgot about this part. Oh my God!
Now I saw this too, and I'm having a new reaction. I'm like, oh my God! How are you getting advice from the most murderous freaking foreign policy person in history? Like they admitted too, like on Morning Joe, Nick, they were, oh yeah. There's people that hate his guts. Yeah, Vietnam. Yeah. They admitted it too, but. This is who Fareed. This shows you the insanity of American foreign policy today, that you are sourcing the most insane maniac, foreign policy maniac that people reference. But go ahead, Nick.
I don't know if you remember this part. I don't know if you remember this part, but it gets worse. Listen to his analysis. So this is the person he quotes, and listen to what he says about Vietnam and how he ties these conflicts together. And this is the part why I decided I was going to cover this segment over all the crazy other shit I've seen. I was like, yep, this is it. This is the segment right here. Listen to this nonsense. This is crazy, fam. I'm going to explain to you guys why. Luckily enough, I've been reading up a lot on Vietnam recently. I was talking about the My Lai massacre on one of my Nick at Night shows. I was talking about how Cambodia is one of the most bombed places with Laos. I'm constantly trying to evolve my foreign policy. So I was reading, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna try to shore up this weak spot. And what I learned horrified the shit out of me, bro. And that's why I reached out to Luna Oy. We're gonna have a conversation about like the My Lai massacre, what happened in Laos, Cambodia, what he did, and they're about to talk about it, bro. This is crazy because I just learned a lot more about this recently. I'm gonna explain.
Nixon's national security advisor, there is a simple rule. The guerrilla wins if he does not lose. The conventional army loses if it does not win. The tragedy of American foreign policy is that having seen the dilemma so clearly, once Kissinger entered government, he got seduced by the need to preserve the US's credibility and pressured not to look weak. So he supported massive military action against the North Vietnamese forces, which failed. The North won in Vietnam.
Are you going to mention the deaths?
Not losing.
Listen to this, CJ, because it get worse. Listen to this shit because I've read a lot about this recently. What he says here is crazy and wrong. I'm gonna explain to you guys here what I mean.
The North won in Vietnam by not losing, and America lost by not winning.
No, bullshit. I'm gonna let it continue. I'm gonna explain why. Everything that they tell you about Vietnam is bullshit. America outright lost and got their ass kicked. But I'm gonna let it continue. I'm gonna expound on that.
Iran's proxies are trying to stir up as much chaos
Actually, no, I think that's the point I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna explain. So everything the narrative about Vietnam and the fact that Americans haven't learned their lesson from that is crazy. So what he's saying here, I'm gonna see if I can pull the quote up again. Where he's explaining how this is Empire Cope. This
conventional army loses if it does not win.
This is Cope, CJ. Remember my assessment of the military? You know how people believe the U.S. military is strong? It's not. The United States military had lost every major war in around like 50 years. We got our ass kicked in Korea. We lost in Afghanistan. We couldn't accomplish any of our objectives in the Middle East. We got our ass kicked in Vietnam, fam, because you know what we could not do? We couldn't fight in forests and jungles. People need to read what actually happens in these wars. Americans got their ass kicked and couldn't accomplish any of their military objectives in Vietnam. So then they lashed out by committing mass atrocities like the My Lai massacre. When they realized they couldn't defeat the Vietnam, they would slaughter entire villages, including raping women and children. These are the same people who come back home and you guys say, these are the troops I can't criticize, by the way. We have monsters among us. All these people, read what happened in Vietnam. People need to learn what happened in Iraq. What do you think it means to be a United States veteran and soldier? You guys know what these people have done in Vietnam? Indiscriminate rapes, murders, and slaughter of villages because they couldn't defeat the Viet Cong. The United States rely on mass bombing campaigns. So what? You can't mass bomb a forest where you can't find their targets. So what Viet Cong would do, they would use guerrilla warfare and they would set up these traps. Look up the Vietnam booby traps. So the Vietnamese, they knew how to spot these traps. These traps was devastating. You know, all these Vietnamese veterans that come back without limbs, they fell into these booby traps. You know, it's estimated around 25% of the United States soldiers that died in Vietnam died because of booby traps. Because every single military tactic that worked in Europe, that worked in America, did not work in Vietnam. It's a new motherfucking area, nigga. New area. Your military tactics are useless here. So what they do instead, CJ, in order to quote unquote win this war, they used napalm. Since they couldn't fight in the forest, they used napalm and destroyed literally entire jungles of wildlife we've never seen before. You guys understand the kind of equal genocide the United States committed in Vietnam? Vietnam has some of the most beautiful jungles we ever seen. They're gone, CJ. You know why? The United States destroyed them all. And that was the death knell for the South Vietnam traitors and fascists, because South Vietnamese fascists they wanted to fight the communists and they was getting their ass kicked. Now think about it. I didn't mean to go this long, but I gotta tell you guys this. Think about this. You have South Vietnamese fascists who were fighting the communists, and then they getting their ass beat. And then all of a sudden, you see a bunch of white people come in. And then they start fighting the people you're fighting. These are your neighbors. You find these people you got because you have a political disagreement with these people. You still care about your sovereignty, though. But you see white people come in, and then they start fighting your war for you. A lot of them defected because of that, because they're like, oh, shit, I thought I was fighting on the right side. But you motherfuckers are siding with traitors and that's slaughtering our villages. And then the United States engaged in napalm, destroyed forest that was sacred to the Vietnamese people. So many of the people in South Vietnam saw that and like, you guys are siding with the white devil that destroyed our forest. We're out. We're out. So these people were not forgiven. A lot of them was executed because they were traitors. They were fascists against the popular communist movement that sided with the United States government. But they lost support of the South Vietnam government. The South Vietnam government lost all legitimacy because they sided with the most extreme fascist war criminals that raped, pillaged villages, and destroyed their forests. So then it was over. The war was over. And you know what they tell you? You know what they tell us, CJ? They tell us, and this is what Luna Oy told me, and it makes way more sense now that I read about Vietnam. They tell us that the Vietnam War ended because of American protest.
Oh, God.
as if the American people have any say. That was how they saved face. Vietnamese people laugh about this to this day. The fact that Americans think that the Vietnam War ended because of American protest. If you guys think it ended because of American protest, why it took so long? Why did it take so long? It ended once we decided the war was over. And then we like, in order to stay faithful, like, oh, well, we're going to listen to the American people. Oh, my God, we heard their protest and we were going to get out of war. Nigga, they were trying to save face. I can do a whole podcast. I'm going to cut off here. I invited Luna Oy on because I did a lot of reading about this. As you guys can see, I told you guys I love history. And Vietnam was always a weak point. I admit that. Like Vietnam, Cambodia. I've been trying to shore up all my weak spots. And I learned a lot about this, fam. And I'm going to do another podcast about this later. That's why I found this part about Vietnam hilarious, because they were pretending that the only reason they can't beat them because they were guerrilla fighters. Now, how is this relevant to today, to tie this to the bow? We are talking about the Ansarullah, ladies and gentlemen. We are talking about Hamas and Iran. If they couldn't beat the Viet Cong because of the environment, how you guys think they're going to beat Hamas? How you guys think they're going to beat the Ansarullah, who master warfare in their environment? They're getting their ass kicked in the Red Sea as we speak right now. So, but Americans believe we're gonna win all these wars, CJ. Then we're gonna go to war with China and defeat the largest navy we ever seen. We're gonna defeat Iran, but we couldn't defeat the Viet Cong. You guys understand why it's so important for us to understand this? When you know this stuff, you understand how absurd these neocons are. When I hear these people calling for war, I'm like, they're calling for mass death of Americans. Nigga, we are set to lose. And I saw a tape from Kim Iverson, and I promise, I'm done after this. I went way longer than I wanted to. But Kim Iverson had a take I actually like. What she said, I've been trying to stop these wars, and I'm still going to stop these wars. But I think it's about time this shit happened already, because Americans need to be humbled. You know what happened to Germany, where they lost the war and they got demilitarized? Their ass got humbled. After their ass got humbled, they stopped spending on military and they started investing in their people. That's why they got free healthcare and great infrastructure, because they were demilitarized. So Kim Iverson, like, nigga, it's about time we get demilitarized. Let's do the war with Iran. Fuck it. Let all the idiots that signed up with the military die. Let's fuck it. Let's go to war with China. Fuck it. Let's get our ass handed to us, because it's about to happen. We're going to get demilitarized. And then maybe after that, we can focus on domestic shit. Because it seems like that's the path we are on. And there's nothing that we can do to stop it, apparently. Because like Vietnam, this is why it's important to know that these anti-war protests is not fucking working. The only way we stop in war, and this is the conclusion I come to for a very long time. I might wrap up with this rant, because I think this is a good point, right? The reason why I'm going after U.S. soldiers, because we need to hold ourselves to a higher standard as being people who are benefiting from the empire. The only way we can start this war machine is we completely divest. When I talk about the My Lai massacre and what we did in Vietnam, you're not going to have this high opinion of these U.S. soldiers as you guys do. If you know what happened in Iraq, you wouldn't have these high opinions. The only way we end the war machine is we say enough is enough. We won't go in Vietnam and commit war crimes. We're not going to fight Russia. We're not going to fight China. So at this point, CJ, and I don't expect everyone to agree with me. I had a lot of people like my opinion. I had some pushback. But at this point, if you want to sign up and die in the war, go fuck off. I'm done. At this point, you don't know what the fuck going to happen to you. Go fuck off, die, save humanity. Like, save humanity time and effort, and let's get this demilitarization process over with. Like, we are destined to see a massive fucking giant defeat of the West here soon. I think I'm gonna play just a little bit more of it so you can hear the last few takes. But I'm almost done. I went on a long rant I did not plan, but let's continue. We will wrap up maybe in a few minutes, CJ.
But wait, to your point, and I saw a little bit of what Kim. I vaguely remember part of that tweet that you are referring to, and it's just insane what we're doing, Nick. If you think about it, like, who does this? Do you go out to a club and be like, I'm picking a fight with 4 different niggas at the same damn time? Like, who does that? Oh, I'm currently fighting Ukraine and I need to be replenished with energy for that. Then I'm asking for money for the Indonesia. When they say Indonesia Pacifica, they talking about China. So then I'm going to be fighting with China, a superpower. So I'm fighting with a dude that's a little bit smaller than me, with Ukraine. Then I'm saying, I'm fighting this little nigga. Big nigga, come over here too. I got you. I want you, big nigga. Come over here. And then I go over here. Oh, there's another big nigga, Russia. Come on over here. You want some of these hands, nigga? You want some of these hands? Right. And then I see a group of brown people, and I say, Middle East, all y'all motherfuckers in the region, bring your ass over here, just by myself, like I'm a ninja. Like, you know, I've been watching a bunch of John Wayne movies. That's what it feels like. The United States watched a bunch of John Wayne movies and picked a fight with a bunch of people about to get their ass handed to them. So to your point, I agree. And now I haven't read the tweet, but I agree with the broad concept that it is that time. It is that time. Like, if the people are so brainwashed that we can't rise up consciously and overtake this people, and the working class is so downtrodden because of capitalism that we can't rise up, the only other way is for another superpower to hand the United States their ass in order to kind of reset this whole process. And hopefully, you know, China being leading the world would be a completely different thing than the U.S. And it feels like it is. Or look what they're doing in South Africa. Look what they're doing all over the world. But yeah, that's my last rant. Go ahead if you want.
I'm pretty much gonna play the video so you guys can see it. My commentary is pretty much done. I'm gonna let the video play. I think I said everything I want to say. I just want you guys to see the rest of this unhinged video, and I may add some final comments at the end. I promise to God I'm not gonna stop it. I'm literally gonna put full screen just so I can't say anything. So I'm gonna let it play out. I want you guys to see it, and then I'm gonna add more comments afterwards.
Of American foreign policy is that having seen the dilemma so clearly, once Kissinger entered government, he got seduced by the need to preserve the US's credibility and pressured not to look weak. So he supported massive military action against the North Vietnamese forces, which failed. The North won in Vietnam by not losing, and America lost by not winning. Iran's proxies are trying to stir up as much chaos as possible to force the US and Israel into large-scale strategic blunders, not to mention to spoil a possible normalization of relations between Israel and Saudi Arabia. The attacks by Islamic resistance in Iraq on US forces have a specific goal: pressure the government of Iraq to expel US forces stationed in that country. The group's militias are the very ones that support the current Shia-dominated government in Baghdad. In a battle between Washington and these militias, the Baghdad government would have to side with those groups that sustain it in power. That would then complete the takeover of Iraq by Iran, symbolized by the expulsion of American troops. And it would further the larger Iranian goal of unraveling the US-built security system in the Persian Gulf. The Biden administration had to respond to these attacks on US troops, but it chose a limited response and should take care not to get into a tit-for-tat with the militias. The Iranians have signaled in several different ways that they are not looking to escalate either. The most effective response to this broader Iran-backed push against American interests in the region would be to show not that Washington can escalate militarily, which of course it can do, but that it can de-escalate politically, meaning that it can use the crisis in Gaza to create conditions for longer-term stability. And that means working to create conditions for Israeli security and Palestinian aspirations for a state, which would then make it much easier not just for Saudi, but broader Arab-Israeli reconciliation. That kind of political and diplomatic response would not appease the war hawks in Washington, but it would be the most effective counter to America's foes. As Michael Corleone says in the same movie, never hate your enemies. It affects your judgment.
Woo, that last bit was hard, but I'm trying to get more discipline, guys. I'm trying, but that was hard. So here's my thoughts. I'll be real quick. I'll get your last thoughts. You guys notice how he painted the concept of Iran trying to peel back U.S. interest in their region as a bad thing? Like, they have every right to try to get rid of the United States, who are illegally occupying their territory. Let me pull this up again for the people who don't know what maps are and what geography is. Do you see the United States anywhere over here? You know this region that Iran is being condemned for wanting to impose their sovereignty over? Do you see the United States anywhere over there? I see one big country called Iran in that area. So I'm asking the guys the question. I am asking Americans the question, what is the objection that you guys have with Iran? Are you guys seriously upset because Iran are not allowing you guys to do whatever the fuck you guys want in the region? Is that the objection? Look at this map and tell me what the fuck is Iran doing wrong. Iraq and Iran, great relationship. The Syrian resistance is teaming up with Iran in order to impose their own sovereignty, to free themselves from American influence. And they explain how, Biden got to find a way. I'm trying to quickly sum up the last few minutes there of that insanity. He was talking about all the ways that Biden can de-escalate, right? And they say, well, one day you can de-escalate by deterring with these strikes. Nigga, how that make any sense? You're going to deter a country from going to war and with aggression actions with bombing? Let me hear, you about going to die by eating fast food too? Is that ignorance is strength shit? You know what I mean? War is peace. If you want to deter someone, you don't bomb them. You want to know what the best thing they can do to deter them, fam? End the genocide in Israel. That's the fucking root cause of what Israel lives doing. If you want to de-escalate with Iran, in U.S. presence in Iraq, as voted by the Iraq government, 2 times over the last 4 years. That would end all the United States attacks in Iraq. You want to know how you de-escalate with Iran? Stop stealing 80% of Syrian oil production and wheat. Then you have no reason for anti-American sentiment in the region. They won't do that. They will say stupid stuff instead, like, you know how we stop regional war? We bomb. How does that make sense? That's my last thought. Let me see. Yeah, I ended there. CJ, any last thoughts? I think that's a good statement. I'll wrap it up. Fuck it. CJ,
Yeah, no, just a few seconds of comments. The United don't believe if it's a lot to take, but foreign policy is one of the top areas you're not to believe the establishment on. You're really, because understand, they're telling you this is what we know what's happening over there where you can't see. Here, they're brainwashing. They're trying to convince you what you're seeing is not actually happening. Over there, you're not seeing it. So you just got to believe their story. They're telling you everything. Everything they're telling you is made up or lies or slanted. So literally, if you don't watch their foreign policy coverage, you're doing better than watching it. Like not watching it is better than watching it at all. You're not missing anything.
I will add one caveat to that.
Go ahead.
I will add one caveat to that kind of helped me. If you watch their foreign policy coverage and assume everything they're saying is the exact opposite, you will land in pretty good positions on a lot of things. I bullshit you guys now. I look into shit, but bro, the second I see what side the United States government in, like for example, like the Ukraine thing, what side is government funding? Oh, they funding Nazis, of course. I know what side. I know what's going on here. Roughly, wherever side they take the exact opposite. I'll read some super chats. I don't know if you have any other statements. I'm gonna personally wrap up.
No, we can get out of here. We're gonna get out of here.
Let's read some super chats. Tomorrow we have Garland Nixon. We got a banger. Are you gonna be able to join us, or are you gonna let me know later? I think that's scheduled for
what time are you doing at your normal time?
I think Zoya said you scheduled. I think Zoya said you scheduled at 8 p.m. Eastern time. I'm gonna see if I can get him at the normal Nick and Night time, but I would go an hour earlier if I had to for Garland. So
what I was gonna say, if I'll talk to you offline.
Yeah, we talk. Okay, it's all good. It's all good. So either way, the point is Garland Nixon tomorrow, Nick at night, and then I think we got Lee Camp Wednesday. I got to check with Zoya again. Once again, show some love to Zoya in the chat. She's doing a great job. She helped get Carl Zah on as well. So I think we rescheduled with Jamu here soon as well. A lot of great guests coming on.
She told me next week. She said next week for a Jamu. I don't remember the date, but next week for a Jamu, that's when he got rescheduled. So yes. Oh, here it goes. This is what I was looking for. So Garland Nixon, she sent me the schedule. Garland Nixon is tomorrow 8 p.m. So if you can convince him to change, he might be able to do that. Lee Camp is the following day, same time, 8 p.m. So if you want to, neither one of us have a show during that time, but we can we can cover that, I guess, if we want to meet up.
We can
talk offline, but yeah. So make sure you tune in, stay tuned in to RBN. Subscribe. Make sure you follow us on Substack. We're trying to bring you more content, more interesting guests, more riveting conversations. So if you appreciate what we're doing, hit that like button. Follow us on Patreon. Go ahead, Nick, with the next.
Yeah, and the thing is, I'm having a great time with Nick and Night season 2 because I'm also learning a ton from my guests. You know what I mean? Like I have like Carl Zahn. He's playing all this complex shit. And then we have Bang. I have a Saw Rod. She's back. I'm gonna invite her back on. She wrote a great article about ICJ. I'm gonna have her back on. I had these rotation of high level guests. We had a union. We had Joshua Welsh, a union worker who exposed union corruption, teaching me a ton of shit. So I'm excited about Nick and Night. And big shout out to Zoya because Zoya's helping out a lot, man. Like running RB is a lot of work, a lot of stress. So having someone like Zoya who helps us with getting these guests helps a lot. So show Zoya a lot of love. She's helping us a lot with these. So we got banger. As you guys already know, banger after banger after banger after banger. All right, see, that's what we got. We got RBN moving forward. So let me get the rest of the super chats here. I mentioned Luna Oy. We're trying to get her back on. I think we had Luna. I had her on like 2 times before. Very babe. She's a streamer.
It's been a while, but she was on here.
She's a streamer out of Vietnam. Thank you for 499 Geo. It'll be awesome to have Luna Oy on again. Her and EJ are translating Vietnamese books on dialectical historical materialism into English. So that's the kind of shit I'm into. I tell you guys, I'm a nerd. I hear that shit like, damn, that's fire. So that's exactly the kind of shit I'm into. So that's exactly why I can't wait to have Luna Oy back on. Thank you for the 1999 John Freeze. NATO can only think in terms of Western Empire versus Persian Empire. It goes back to Alexander Great and then the Romans. We have to learn the history behind the Western Empire bubble. That's why it's so important, man. I cannot stress enough the importance of history, fam. I cannot stress enough. That's what got me into politics when I studied history and I learned that every government ever lied to their people. Almost every war is like set off because of some lie or some interest that had nothing to do with the people over and over and over again. So it's, to me, it's insane because you got historians who establishment historians who do this all the time. If you know the history of war, why would you assume the country that engaged in war that you live in right now is telling the truth? Like this kind of was like a basic thought that got to me. Every war ever was started off of false pretenses and lies. And we're supposed to believe that about every war except the current one? Anyway, I hope that point makes sense. You know what I mean? So as I learned about war, as I studied history, that made me more skeptical of my government. Because the history of humanity is the history of wars, the history of conspiracy, the history of deceit. You hear about Rome and the political reasons why Rome wanted to expand. The amount of men in Rome sacrificed for no reason. Like there are tens of thousands of Roman men who died for like just because I don't want to go on another history rant, and I won't. But the Roman like emperors or whatever, they will govern for like a year, 2 years. Like they had like the earliest concepts of term limits. But because of that, they will seek glory because they was only in public for a small time. What's the fastest way to get glory? By wars. So a lot of time in Roman history, wars would start because some politician, when they get glory, they realize they only have 1 to 2 years in order to start the war, so they'll lie and they will do all these warmongering stuff. That is one example of many. I'm like, okay, human history is just people creating war for political reasons. And I'm learning this in my late 20s, maybe 19, 20, 21. So I'm like, okay, every war started because of that, right? World War I started because of mix of regional tensions, but also because a lot of countries wanted to test their new technology, new war technology. They were like, man, we want to see what this war shit does. Like they never have our best interests at heart. And I learned that through studying history. Then I started questioning. I'm like, all right, so if they lied about every war, what are they lying about right now? What are they lying about? And now I got to Iraq. Then I started looking to what they lying about right now. And that what led to me. That's why I told you guys, history what got me into politics, this thought pattern. Anyway, last friend. I apologize. Last friend of the day. Hope you guys enjoy them. I'm trying to be more concise. I view streaming like a sport. You know what I mean? If you look at my streams like 2 years ago, trash. I think like, I look at old visual. I think they're trash because I constantly try to improve. So hopefully, I'm trying to be more concise. I'm trying. But anyway, thank you for the $2, Kyle. Hey Nick, driving by to show support. Big shout out to my friend Kyle. Appreciate it. I think we caught up with that said. No, actually, no, 2 more. Sorry, I missed. Thank you for becoming a YouTube member. Great way to support the network. Another one for Sam. Yeah, 3 more from here. Thank you for the 199 Sam. Fariz Zakaria supported South Africa apartheid at Yale. Doesn't surprise me. Does not surprise me at all. He's one of the most soulless people in media. There's a reason why they trust him to report on foreign policy stuff. Him, Ali Veshi, they got this blonde girl. Yeah, there's this blonde girl on Fox News. I don't know her name, but she does a lot of foreign policy stuff. She's really good at war propaganda. I don't know her name. She's the older blonde woman with a very annoying voice. You guys will know her when I show her, but she's like the Fox News foreign policy like lady. Like, anyway, let me move on. Thank you for $10. Keep up the excellent work, RBN. Would love to see rap in imperialism and immigration. After I think I was talking about that just a little bit earlier. But yeah, that's my thing. Like, I think like my take is very nuanced, man. Like, because I understand why people are upset at their government not spending money for the right things. But when you know this is what I know, when you know how much we spend on military and war, when you understand the sanctions regime, blaming migrants, when you know how we spend more in our military budgets than other countries spend on. We spend more on our police budgets than other countries do on their military. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of Americans don't know the money we spend. So to me, my personal opinion is I don't understand why people would be upset about like benefits migrants getting when you see the kind of money we are spending on stuff like corporate bailouts and wars. If all that stuff was eliminated and it still wasn't taking care of us, I guess you can look at the margins, you know what I mean? But I'm looking at the big picture. I feel like people don't look at the big picture. Even if you quote 9 million for migrants, nigga, that's nothing. You guys understand what the kind of drop in the bucket that is compared to what police are spending? So what I view it as a lack of discipline. And I am willing to take a pushback because not everyone agree with me on this issue. Like, it's not even an issue that it's not like even a Marxist issue. You know what I mean? I just think people need to stop buying into this bullshit because there's nothing more that the establishment like when they see black people attack migrants. You know
It's
what
crabs
I mean?
in a bucket. That's what they're
Yeah.
doing. Crabs in a bucket. It's like, you know what I mean? They want the response that black people are having in Chicago is the response they want you to have. But what those black people are not broadly examining, analyzing, is that them depriving you of resources is not going to change because somebody else gets resources. Like,
yeah,
you're not going to, you know what I mean? Oh, get the migrants out. You're not getting any of that money. None of that shit is coming to you. So,
yeah,
you know what I mean? But it's a way of saying it's frustration. It's like, I'm not getting nothing and they're getting something. It's like, you're not going to get nothing anyway. And it's just not, it's a lack of understanding of that.
One last quick thought. I feel it as a shortcut. You know what I mean? I tell you guys, I'm not a liberal. I'm a Marxist. I'm not for shortcuts. We need revolution. No one believes in reparations more than me. No one. But a lot of adults people, they have no idea how to get the reparations. Oh my God, they give money to migrants instead of giving us reparations. Okay, if they give all of the money to the border, if they end the migration crisis tomorrow, you are not getting reparations. Do you guys understand that? Do you guys understand that there's no way we get reparations without Marxist class warfare? People think electoral politics is going to get us reparations. People think we vote for enough Democrats to get reparations. No, I don't like. It's the liberal mindset of what people view as pro-black policy. They liberal minded, so they blame the migrant instead of engaging in class warfare. Like, we're not going to get reparations without class warfare. We're not going to get it if we just go with white people and blame the migrant. Because even if the migrant wasn't here, your black ass is still not getting reparations. I still don't understand why people don't understand that. You know what I mean? But anyway, let's continue. I'll die on this. So you guys know I'm one of them people. And CJ is the same thing. I remember you said the same thing. I am one of them people. I don't care if position or popular. I would stand on the hill on my own, plant a flag. And you said the same thing. I got it from you. You said the same thing. Me and CJ, the reason why we get along, I'm the kind of person where I'm like, prove me wrong. If I am wrong, if I view the error in my logic, I will change direction. But if I am not given that, I don't care. Like, if it's like considered an unpopular position, I will sit there on the hill and die on there and ask people to prove me wrong. That's just how both me and CJ are. But anyway, let's move on. And I just haven't seen like the super hardline like immigration people do that to me. I haven't seen them people explain to me how if we end immigration tomorrow, that working class condition will improve. If we end immigration tomorrow, black people's life conditions will improve. You have to prove that to me, and they have not done that. So anyway, let's move on. I'm a randy motherfucker today. I usually am when I have a day off. I usually don't stream on Saturday. I usually don't stream on Sunday, so I come in Monday hot. That's usually what happens. Last super chat, thank for $2. What a sociopath. The war distracting Joe. Yeah. Distracting him instead of him engaging in it. But anyway, last thoughts, CJ, I'll pass to you. Any other announcements? That's all the super chats that I've seen. I'll be back tomorrow, Nick and Night with Garland Nixon. For Nick and Night. So
yeah, we'll talk. I'm gonna see if I'm able. It basically it's. I mean, I can say it now. If it's at the 5 o'clock hour, I probably can squeeze that in. The 6 o'clock, I probably can't because I got to be out.
It's all good. It's all good. It's all good.
Which is 9 your time. Yeah. So, that's just tomorrow. But Wednesday, I can do it. All right. Yeah. I think I'm actually gonna do a quick segment on this video. I forgot I had planned. So
yeah, I'll see you guys tomorrow if you don't mind. I'll see you guys.
Yeah. Yeah, no problem. All right, so what I forgot, everybody, is the Dearborn. It's listed in the description. So I'll just play the Dearborn mayor. So if you're not if you haven't been following, and it's Dearborn, Michigan. Dearborn, Michigan is home to a large population of Arab and Muslim people in that area. Some Palestinians, or at least they support the Palestinian cause. But this Dearborn mayor has been going on every corporate news channel. I've been seeing him on a lot of stuff, and he has been absolutely destroying people on these networks. And we're going to start here with Abby Martin. I'm trying to get the longer version. Yeah, here it goes from Abby directly. So here is that video, and so we'll watch this one and then another one, but I'm going to play a lot of it without stopping. So let's get through this fairly quickly, try to keep it to about a 12-minute segment. Let's go.
Joining me now is Abdullah Hammoud. He's the mayor of Dearborn, Michigan, which is home to one of the nation's largest Arab American communities. Mayor, thanks for joining us. President Biden is in your state courting union members, but he did not meet with Arab Americans during this trip. Was this a missed opportunity?
I absolutely think it's a missed opportunity whenever dialogue can happen, constructive dialogue that can help save lives, because that's the conversation we want to have. And calling for a ceasefire and ending the bombing and unrestricted military aid to Israel, we want to save lives. We believe no innocent man, woman, or child should be killed.
And to that end, the White House says that it's deploying senior administration officials to Michigan this month to discuss a number of issues with community leaders there, including this war. If the White House does extend an invitation to meet, will you accept it?
For anybody who wants to have a conversation about how we change course, that's the only condition, that there has to be a willingness and an openness to change course on what's unfolding now. Secretary Blinken just last week said that the Middle East is the most volatile it's been in 50 years. And that's due in part because of this administration's decision making. So if they're willing to come to the table with an open mind on how to change course, that's a conversation and dialogue that we can partake in.
So you're saying that.
So what he's saying is, hey, yeah, if you're willing to, make changes, yeah, we can talk. Because that's when she asked, well, are you willing to meet with him? Because this last time he was there, they didn't meet. And that's why she asked him about the missed opportunity. And she's saying, in the future you'll be there. Would you meet with him if it's something in the future? And he's saying, well, with this one caveat. Now listen to her follow-up question to that.
That you really only want to sit down if they say in advance that they are willing to change their strategy. Is that what your position is?
Now, if you had a disagreement with your congressional official and you said you wanted to voice your concern.
I love his response. And that's what I was going to say. My ear set didn't stop the video quick enough for me to say that, but I love his response to this. And let's watch.
And you said you wanted to voice your concerns. And if they said, hey, I'll come listen to you, but I'm never going to change my mind, I think you yourself would say, hey, you know what? Let's just pass in this conversation and save both our times. But if there's a willingness and an openness to say, hey, you in Dearborn, you might know a little something. We come from these Arab countries that everybody keeps talking about online. The largest portion of the city of Dearborn is largely Lebanese immigrants, Palestinian, Yemeni, Syrian, Iraqi. In each one of these countries, we have lived through the firsthand accounts of apartheid, of occupation, of oppression, of bombardment, devastation, and bombing. And so we can speak from a firsthand accounts of what's actually unfolding on the ground.
Some Michigan Arabs and Muslims have launched a campaign, and they're saying abandon Biden, and they're urging members of their community to show up to the polls but not cast their vote for Biden. These efforts are also happening in other key states. This is, as I'm sure you know, going to be a very close election likely. Do you agree with this strategy, abandon Biden?
For me, that question has to be put back to the candidate, to President Biden. It's on the candidate. It's his responsibility to earn the trust and respect of the voters. I've run for office before. I've never pointed at the voters of my district and said, you're at fault if I'm not elected. In fact, it's me as the candidate. It's President Biden as the candidate to put.
What I love, and I've said this, something similar to this in another segment, is that I don't know if he is, I don't know, like if he just studies and just rehearsed this, prepared so much, or if he's doing this on the fly and he's just good on the fly. but the responses to some of these things that they ask people all the time, like these questions they put forth on people who are on the left, people who are against democratic policy positions, they always bring them on. They do this to like AOC or somebody else on the left. They always put them on, but and make it the dynamic, a lesser of two evil dynamic. Like Trump is worse and he's going to do blah, 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 blah. So what do you want to have happen? He's worse. And he's like, well, I'm not the one to answer that question. That's actually a question that's supposed to be posed to a candidate. And because he's a candidate, he can speak from that perspective and it lands well. And I've seen him do it in multiple interviews. This is a good messenger for this message that needs to be delivered to the Biden administration and the broader Zionist coalitions.
Put forward a policy platform that is receptive to all of Americans. What we're asking for, a ceasefire, is not something that only the majority of Arab Americans and Muslim Americans support. In fact, over 60% of Americans support a ceasefire, over 80% of Democrats. And so for me, I would urge President Biden to heed the calls of Americans from coast to coast.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, certainly you want the president to change his position. I think one of the things that and I know you've gotten a lot of questions about this, people are wondering about realistically, what is the alternative and what does that alternative mean for the Palestinian people? Does it worry you about what a Trump presidency could mean for those lives that you said earlier? You're concerned about each and every one of the innocent people who shouldn't die being saved.
Absolutely. I think Trump is a threat to American democracy. So the question should stand. What will President Biden do to prevent the unraveling of our American democracy? Why is being aligned with Benjamin Netanyahu and the most right-wing government in Israel's history worth potentially sacrificing our American democracy? You know, I had a resident that came before a city council meeting who had lost over 80.
This guy is so freaking good. Because again, I'm just going to reiterate the point I already made, is that these are classic questions since the era of since the Trump era. These are classic questions that are constantly presented to people who, when they're presented with this lesser of two evil, well, you better support because what about Trump? What about Trump? And for me, he has had the best answer I've heard on these 2 or 3 points that is constantly brought up to get people to vote for the lesser of two evil. He has had the best answers I've ever seen, I've ever heard.
Is a threat to American democracy. So the question should stand. What will President Biden do to...
Because the question is easier in this dynamic of saving democracy. Let's say we're in a strategy session and I'm part of the Biden administration, or I'm part of the coalition who wants to stop the ending of democracy, which is the election of Trump. Let's go with what they're saying. So I'm part of I forget the point I was going to make. Hang on a second here. I did have something written down.
Should stand. What will President Biden do to prevent the unraveling of...
This is what I was going to say. Is it easier if I'm in a strategy session with you? Is it easier for us to get 100 people to do what we want to do, or is it easier for one person to make a change? Is it easier to get millions of people across battleground states to come out and vote for Joe Biden, regardless of his policy position on Israel? Or is it an easier thing for Joe Biden, one person, to have a policy change position on Israel that will get millions of people in battleground states to come out and vote for him? Which one is easier to do? I would say it's to change the single person. The person who is one person that needs to be changed. I prolonged the point. Let's continue.
Of our American democracy. Why is being aligned with Benjamin Netanyahu and the most right-wing government in Israel's history worth potentially sacrificing our American democracy? You know, I had a resident that came before a city council meeting who had lost over 80 family members in Gaza. And the question in everybody's mind is, while we send our condolences for your loved ones, we want to know how you're going to vote come November. And I think that's extremely dehumanizing to think of Palestinian lives only in the context of polls. Arab American lives and Muslim American lives outside of the context of just polls.
Well, yeah, I totally understand that. I think, but really what I'm wondering about is not about the polls, but do you believe genuinely that President Biden, I think the White House would say this, behind the scenes, that they're trying to put pressure on the Israeli government to reduce the loss of innocent lives? Do you believe that at all, or do you think that that's not happening?
I believe those are political talking points. There's never been a war in history in which 80% of the country is absolutely decimated, where 100% of the population has been displaced, and where 50% of all the deaths are children. That has never happened. For us, we want action, not lip service. If President Biden wants to take a firm stance, he could begin by restricting military aid to the state of Israel. He could begin by calling a ceasefire, because right now, nearly 200 civilians are killed.
You can see in her face the concern. You can see in her face the concern that the establishment is not going to be able to convince, to fool this constituency into voting for him. Like they've done with so many constituencies, like they do with the Black constituency. They go around murder freaking George Floyd and then say George Floyd Act that never passed, and then freaking tell Black people, ask Black people for their vote again. But in her face, throughout this entire interview, especially when he's giving these answers, but not just regular answers that are very good answers to her questions, it is such a look of concern on her face that, wow, this guy is not gonna come up off of this, and this guy is standing on principle regardless. And it sounds like the people who he is speaking for is gonna be standing on this, and we're gonna be getting Trump again.
Each and every single day. These are tangible steps that can be taken, because what we understand is only diplomatic efforts can lead to lasting peace and justice.
All right, Mayor Abdullah Hammoud, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
It's nothing. He's good.
Joining me now is Abdullah Hammoud. He's the mayor of Dearborn, Michigan, which is home to one of the nation's largest Arab American.
There we go. All right, so next, let me show you the next thing in this segment. So I'm going to come back to the Dearborn mayor because he's on another show, but I do want to cover some sort of filler receipts, and I'm calling her filler. There's not Dearborn mayor speaking, but it's on the same topic of voters not supporting Joe Biden, and it's because of what's happening in Palestine and Israel. Now, here's a short segment on young voters. It's under a minute, this particular clip, that Case Study QB clip from CNN, where it's talking about young voters, and these are high schoolers who happen to be 18, old enough to vote. And no, we're not voting for Biden. Let's listen.
I don't feel like he represents the young voter demographic at all.
It's the first time Imani Williams and her friends can vote. Dante Parker said a vote for Biden is hardly guaranteed.
We've been stuck in this system for far too long. Maybe we need to venture outside of it to really make some progress now.
The Biden campaign tells CNN it will draw sharp distinctions with Trump and earn the support of voters concerned about their rights, their pocketbooks, and our democracy.
We are not happy with Biden, but we understand that the other option is not an option that's favorable to us.
Norman Clement said voters are eager to hear what Biden would do in a second term, not simply what he's done or tried to do.
Are you more worried about people voting for Trump or more worried about young voters and others not voting at all?
I'm worried about the protest vote. My messages to them is that we did that in 2016. We held our vote. Folks didn't come out.
I don't feel like he represents the young voter demographic at all.
It's the first.
This is looking pretty terrible for Joe Biden. And just think about 12 months ago when the polls were showing bad for Joe Biden. It's a year out. It's 11 months out. It's 10 months out. It's 9 months out. And they're still saying, it's 9 months out. where are we gonna get to? What, 3 months out? And there's it's 3 months out. We still can turn this around. It feels like if you ever seen one of them YouTube videos where somebody's falling, it feels like they fell very slow. Like it was a very slow, like they hit the wall and kind of fell, took them 3 seconds to hit the ground. It feels like that's what we're witnessing with Joe Biden. It feels like we're witnessing a slow motion fall, a slow motion loss for Joe Biden. Let's get to this next part. Same deal. Joe Biden losing because of the youth vote and his stance on Israel. Let's listen to this clip. This is MT. This is Meet the Press Daily.
Let me turn to you now. There are obviously some protests we were talking about surrounding President Biden's visit to Michigan. This follows a series of protests that you guys were tracking last week when he was out on the trail. So break down, what are his goals of this trip? How are they responding to the protesters?
Exactly, Kristen. And the president is currently here in the Detroit area meeting with United Auto Workers, union workers specifically, and really trying to build on that momentum from the endorsement. But right outside of where that meeting is taking place, we are seeing dozens of protesters who have gathered there in Warren, Michigan, to really make their position very clear. And many of them, according to our team who's been speaking to them, supported the president back in 2020. These are people who they say would have voted for him again, but because of the Biden administration's continued support of Israel in its war against Hamas, they are saying that right now they cannot vote for Joe Biden, and they are leading this movement that is called the Abandon Biden movement to continually point out that they want to call for a complete ceasefire there because of the high number of civilian casualties of Palestinians. And they are really doing this now in a way that you're seeing more often on the trail when the president is traveling. And it's not just here in Michigan, but elsewhere. But the reason that the president is coming to this critical battleground state is to make this larger economic argument that is bolstered by this key union support. So you really see the president here trying to navigate the complexities of wanting to build on that domestically while really dealing with the foreign policy implications of his own decisions with voters that he will need if he wants to win a state like this or a state like Wisconsin. So you're really seeing both of these things and these competing interests on display here today, Kristen.
We are, and as you've been talking and giving us your great reporting, Monica, we've been watching live pictures of those protesters, some even holding signs that say, quote, genocide Joe, which underscores, Monica, I think the breadth of this political problem for President Biden. I've spoken to some of these supporters who say, look, one-time supporters, I should say, who say they cannot see themselves going back to President Biden. But what is the strategy to try to win some of these folks back, Monica? What's the campaign telling you about that?
And this was really clear last week when the Biden campaign manager, Julie Chavez Rodriguez, came to Dearborn, Michigan. She was supposed to sit down with some key leaders in the Arab American community. There were some who said, look, we don't really want to sit down with you and have this conversation. There were others who did. So they were trying to make those connections and have these conversations. The White House has said that in the coming days and weeks, you're going to be seeing some White House officials, others connected to the campaign and the reelection effort, come back to Michigan to try to have these discussions. But it's clearly quite fraught because the president himself, who is here, we know, for this union-driven event, is not sitting down with members of this community that we know of. That's not what is planned or in the schedule today. But so far, since the war began on October 7th, the White House and the campaign say there have been nearly 100 conversations between key officials in the Biden orbit and these key community members, and they want to continue that cadence. But clearly, there are calls for the president to reach out in a different way, perhaps, as well. Kristen.
Yeah, that type of outreach could be key. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, lots of great information in that. I'm just going
Let me turn to you now. There are obviously
a
some
little
protests we're talking about
bit
surrounding President.
quickly. Let's pause that one. Went through that one. Went through that one. There is one more. Yeah, that one. Okay, so All right, so yeah, now I've gotten through all of them. Now we're gonna get back to the one with the mayor, and here's Democracy Now! Covering what's happening and this phenomena that's happening about abandoning Biden.
President Biden had overwhelmingly the Arab American vote in the last presidential election. Talk about how it's dropped precipitously.
It's gone from 59% in 2020 to 17% end of last October. I dare say it's even lower now. People have gone from shock and disappointment now to anger. And I think that the mayor, I'm a big fan of Mayor Hamoud, but I think he speaks very well and clearly toward what the attitude of the community is. This isn't a time to come and talk about voting for you. It's a time to talk about what the heck are you doing? And I have to say that in addition to the policy being so awful, so insensitive, so just genocidal in terms of what it's been doing, not only in terms of supporting Israel, but the ways we've been supporting Israel. In addition to that, they've been totally ham-fisted in the way that they've dealt with the community. There's not been a single Arab American leadership meeting with officials. They've brought in meetings. They say this is a Muslim meeting, and they have excluded the Arab American leadership and brought in some random people that they find to fill a room so they can check the box and say, we met with people. But it's never been substantive, and it's never produced an outcome. I think they really don't care. And they think, as they've said to me, come November, it's a binary choice and your folks will vote for us. They won't. I've seen it before. We saw it in 2000. We saw it in 2016. They'll vote for third party or they won't vote at all. And that spells disaster for this White House.
I heard a number of people yesterday in Michigan being interviewed, Arab American voters, when asked, well, do you really think President Trump, with his Muslim ban and promising to do it again, and his much closer relationship with Netanyahu and the far right in Israel would be better? And time and again, I mean, you had people holding up signs that said abandon Biden. And when saying they wouldn't vote for either, saying they would simply write in ceasefire.
And that's what we're hearing. And that's what is happening right now is a move afoot to vote ceasefire. I think they're voting uncommitted is what the trend is in this primary. I think that the White House is taking for granted that they've got support, and they don't. They don't have ears on the ground. People who are doing the outreach for them don't have ears to hear what the community is saying, or simply don't want to go back and tell their bosses, this is what the community is saying. The result is that they're cut off from reality. They're cut off from reality that's taking place on the ground. I mean, it is a genocide. It is unfolding. They told us they were going to do it. They've done it. We're watching it play out every single day. And yet the administration response is, oh, we're urging them to be careful about civilians, and we're telling them the humanitarian aid needs to come through. It's not coming through. Genocide is happening, and yet they live in a world of denial, and they think that we're going to believe the denial instead of what we see with our eyes. So that's how they're operating with the policy, but it's also how they're operating with the politics. These folks will come around. Like I said, it's insulting, it's demeaning, it doesn't respect people's real feelings, and the result is that they're slow walking the president into the abyss. And November is going to be, I think, a real problem for the White House.
Perfect. Now, being a post-duopolist, like what's happening to Joe Biden, what's happening, or what would happen to Donald Trump if he was in the same position? Like, I don't have any skin in the game. I absolutely believe that regardless of the president, the policies are the same. It's the same donors. It's the same people who are working in these institutions. Just because there's a different head, they're not going to drastically change their policy. But we're seeing how we are not living in a democracy, because what the mayor pointed out multiple times in his interview, 60% of Democrats, 60% of everybody wants a ceasefire in occupied Palestine, and 80% of Democrats. So if this was a democracy and that's what they want, and you guys are representatives of us, you're representing what we want in our government. That includes the president. So if the people are saying they want this, you should make a change. But the people also said they didn't want him to run, and he didn't make a change. That's still in the 70th percentile. And I think it's been in the 70, that's 70 percentile for at least a year of his own party saying they don't believe Joe Biden should be running again. So clearly the establishment has shown multiple times that they don't care what the vast majority of people want. They're going to just change the messaging and convince people and get more and more people tuned out of this system. So those are my final words on the topic, and I'll do what I promise I do at the end of every stream, and that's just to scroll through my Twitter feed to see if there's any breaking stories. So let's do that on our way out. Hit that like if you will, appreciate it. It actually helps a lot to with the algorithm that we are suppressed on. So everyone counts. If we can hit we need to have a target of about 800 likes each stream, because we need about 800 likes to equal the views. It's so weird. So if you watch like a Rising video, it'll have 200 likes, 10,000 views. Like, what the fuck? If ours has 200 likes, that's about 300 views. It is so like lopsided the way the algorithm works. For us, if a non-suppressed channel has 800 likes, that would equal something like 35,000, 45,000 views. We have 800 likes, we got 5,000 views. It is insane, but not much we can do about it. Let's read a couple of comments and before we get out of here. UN Army, love seeing Rumble now in the chat. Love seeing that. Here are the 3 reasons for immigrants: votes, cheap labor, field military recruitment. Great analysis, appreciate it. Another Rumble. I love seeing Rumble because we didn't see it before. All right, so let's look through my feed real quickly and see if there's anything that I'm missing. Here? Anything breaking? We covered this Chuck Schumer video. We didn't cover it. We watched it, but it was another video. It was from Warner. What's his name? Mark Warner, who went on right after Chuck Schumer. Then there's this one. The mainstream media is losing their collective minds because Tucker was spotted in Russia. So Tucker is preparing, I think, to interview Vladimir Putin, and establishment is going crazy. Let's actually watch this video by Nico House on this topic. Let's watch it.
So Tucker Carlson is on a trip to Russia, and the U.S. has collectively lost their fucking minds because of it. It seems like some in mainstream politics and media have this gut-wrenching fear that Tucker Carlson might interview Putin and do some real journalism. Now, the interview itself would be a big deal because of who Putin is and who Tucker is, but it's also a big deal for another reason. Tucker tried to do this before when he worked for Fox News, and the NSA, that's right, the U.S. government got involved, started literally going through this man's personal emails and basically forced Fox News to pull the plug on the interview. So now you have weirdos like Bill Kristol saying that Tucker Carlson shouldn't be able to re-enter the country, bruh, just because he's in Russia. And they don't even know why he's there because technically, as of right now, the Kremlin has denied any interview that may or may not take place. Now, all these people in the mainstream don't want Tucker Carlson to interview Vladimir Putin because he's a quote-unquote enemy of the United States. But this is a new phenomenon, I assure you, because before, we would champion journalists who are willing to engage with perceived adversaries of the United States. For example, here's Larry King while working for CNN interviewing Muammar Gaddafi. Right? Could you imagine CNN actually doing an interview with Muammar Gaddafi today? Pulitzer Prize winner and former CNN journalist Peter Arnett. discussing his interview with Osama bin Laden. Yep, that same Osama bin Laden. And yet, he didn't catch any flack for it. In fact, he was celebrated for it, and it's one of the most famous interviews on the planet. Now, we already know that journalism has in some ways always been under attack. But now more than ever, they don't want you to hear anything from the other side. And do you wonder why that may be? Well, in this particular case, you have the most famous journalist on Twitter going to interview one of the most powerful world leaders right after Ukraine has basically gotten their asses handed to them, and Putin effectively came out on top. And I think that he might have a bone to pick with the Western world and the propaganda that they've put out regarding Russia in its fight against the neo-Nazi regime in Ukraine. But effectively, all Tucker Carlson would be doing is maintaining a time-honored tradition by other journalists. But he is being attacked for potentially doing the exact same type of work other mainstream journalists like Larry King and Peter Arnett have done. So is it really about the journalism, or is it about NATO in the United States getting exposed in more lies? Because they know that now people's eyes and hearts are open and are willing to hear the other perspective, the one that's not being provided by the mainstream media here in the States.
There you go. There you go. So that was a cool video. Let's continue down my feed and see if there's any other sort of breaking news stories that I don't want to miss while I'm on. That is Lee Camp. Lee Camp will be on Wednesday. Garland Nixon will be here tomorrow. We went over this here, the numbers. Steve Kornacki at the board on Meet the Press. So we saw that today. We saw this one today. Did you see this? Watch Vladimir Putin walk by Netanyahu and left him hanging, shall we say. Netanyahu reaches out to shake his hand. He skips over that shit. Watch this. That was him if you didn't see it.
It is.
That was funny. That's it. Right. And he shakes the guy from France, and of course, that's King Charles right there. All of the Western chauvinists seem to be in attendance. That's Jimmy Dore chiming in on the same video. The Chuck Schumer video is pretty viral. Here's a premiere or a promo. That's Bree talking to Jeffrey Sachs about several things, but is Biden administration going to lose because of his Israel stand? I believe that's the name of the full video. Actually, let's watch some of it right here. Let's watch some of it. This is not the full video, so we can watch.
Well, remember that our ambassador to the UN feels probably more than anyone in Washington the total isolation of the United States in world opinion and in the attitudes of the other governments of the world other than Israel itself. There was a UN General Assembly vote calling for political self-determination of the Palestinian people, in which 4 countries, 4 out of the 193 UN member states voted against. What were those 4 countries? That was Israel, of course, the United States, Micronesia, which by compact has to vote with the United States, and Nauru, a country of 12,000 people. In other words, Ambassador Thomas Greenfield knows we're completely isolated globally. Nobody believes what the United States is doing. Nobody accepts it. Nobody backs this massacre in Gaza. And so she's reflecting that. In Washington, they don't feel it day by day the same way. What they also are not taking into account is that with the International Court of Justice ruling, every action every day is now being recorded and monitored against the ruling that the court made. In other words, the clock has started. and everything is being watched, including the U.S. actions as well. So the U.S. government absolutely is on notice. It is shocking. 26,000 dead in Gaza, 2 million displaced, and one news story put out by Israel and the United States and about a dozen allies cancel the aid in the context of a devastating hunger crisis facing hundreds of thousands of people, canceled the support for the very organization, the only one that is charged with overcoming the famine. So this is complicity in genocide, if this is the way that the United States is going to act. It is a pretty damn uncomfortable place to be. And that's what the ambassador is trying to convey. But, you know, she takes her orders from Washington of how to vote.
Pretty good clip. Check out the full video. She dropped it today, 30 minutes after we started our show. Maybe 15 minutes because we started late. We had to push it back. Let's see if there's any other video. This is Jake Sullivan says the genocide in Gaza will continue until Hamas no longer able to pose a threat to Israel. He justifies this on the ground. We don't need to watch that one. That might be it. I don't see any other major. That's that handshake thing everybody's talking about. Outside of that, all right, everybody, I'm gonna be throwing up where you are from. If you would type in where you're from, where you're watching us from today, I will toss that up as we close out these videos. Are these longer videos? Okay, so yeah, let's watch these longer videos here. These longer. I wanted this one, but it's short. So this is the same Dearborn mayor. I guess he has an interview on H.A.M. I think that's how you say the name of that show, but it's not enough time there. Here's another one. Let's see what this one is. This one is a little bit longer. State Department spoke. Military response to stopping. Oh, what is this one saying? I think I'll end with this one. Here, let's end with this one. There we go. So put up where you're from, where you're watching from. I'll toss that up as we watch this video end. Thank you for watching. We got a super chat, actually. Oh, wow. I didn't know that. All right, so let's read the super chat. Then I can take off. So we got one new super chat. I'll read this one here from John Freeze. Seems like we are not at a crossroads where a lot of people can become communists and leave the duopoly. Seems like we are at a crossroads where a lot of people can become communists. Yes. Okay. I joined my local chapter of the Communist Party, and I am trying to work from their local organizing. And that is a fantastic point, and it's one of our mantras. It's organize. What is it? It's strategize nationally, organize locally. So nationally, RBN strategizes. The five of us, hey, this is what we want to do as a strategy. But then locally, you organize locally in your community. So shout out to John for the super chat and also for just joining your local community. And that's what I would say. My advice, get involved in some local community, join some local organization that's doing some good work. If it's a mutual aid organization, if it's an organization like a political ideology, socialist or communist, do all those things. But again, let me know where you are watching from, the city, the state, and I'll toss that up as we watch this video with Bree. Let's watch.
I spent quite a bit of time in Iraq when Saddam Hussein was president, before shock and awe. And I knew so many Iraqis at so many levels of society who had to be members of the Ba'ath Party, Saddam Hussein's ruling party, the Ba'ath Party, in order to have a job in civil society, as a teacher, as a public worker. The whole workforce Most people became members of the Ba'ath Party, not because they loved Saddam Hussein, but because that was the ruling authority. It was what they needed to do to pursue their jobs, their careers, their lives. It wasn't a country of corrupt people who all just, loved everything Saddam Hussein did. It was just a fact of life. Hamas is not just the Qassam brigades. People use the term Hamas with a very broad brush, and it might make for a good narrative, but it's far more complicated. So when you say, as the Wall Street Journal is alleging, based on this, the laundering of Israeli so-called intelligence, that 10% of these people had connections to Hamas or Islamic Jihad, I'm sure the number is far greater than that. Because what do you mean by connection? Hamas is not just Qassam Brigade. Hamas is the ruling authority, whether you like them or not. They pick up the trash. They provide civil services. The laziness is also part of the banality of evil. Is the laziness among the public. Don't even bother to check. Well, what does that even mean? When I read people are connected to Hamas, it's like, well, of course they are. This isn't some scary smoking gun that you've produced for us. And Hamas is much more complicated than the Qassam brigades and October 7th. This is a long story. And by the way, Benjamin Netanyahu has played a significant role in ensuring that Hamas would remain in power in Gaza. And they don't want to talk about that. In fact, what about Netanyahu's relationship to Hamas? Why isn't that the subject of a big Wall Street Journal piece about how maybe we should defund the Israeli government just because of Netanyahu's deep ties to Hamas and keeping that money flowing from Qatar?
Right. Let's call it Israel-backed Hamas, the way we say Iran-backed Houthis or whatever it is.
Well, it is U.S.-backed Israeli. I mean, we all should start just, really using. I know you do sometimes, I do sometimes, but it really should just become the default now. Those are the rules. We didn't make the rules, Bree.
Right.